The story begins with Jin fighting a dragon, which is his routine as a hunter, and after he manages to defeat it, he heads to the Hunters Guild, which comes as a surprise to the receptionist as this sort of thing takes over a week. Additionally, she lets him know that he has completed all the requests that were sent in for him, and now he can finally rest for the first time in months. Apparently, the demand is so high that Jin keeps getting an endless stream of commissions. One more reason that he works so hard is that he needs the bread to support the two monstrous gluttons at home. With that being said, he returns to his house, and after adding the money to his retirement funds, Jin visits the perfect picnic spot to grill some high-grade meat. Furthermore, he decides to devour some rice balls as well, but fails to hold it in his hands due to how hot it is. The rice ball rolls down the hill and Jin runs after it. In the end, he manages to grab the rice ball, only to notice a deep pit right below him. As expected, Jin falls down the hole, ultimately losing his consciousness. Soon after, he finds himself on the ground, wondering where he is, and after taking a look around, he realizes that all the plants and this landscape look unfamiliar. Although he's been a hunter since his early life, Jin has never seen something like this. But as a hunter, he's used to unforeseen circumstances and decides to first find a source of water and then to look for a way home. Luckily, he also seems to have a return scroll which will take him back home in a flash, but as these things are pretty expensive, he wants to find a better option before using this. While making his way through the forest, Jin hears the sound of a sleeping monster, and it turns out to be a type of dragon he has never seen before. Knowing that it's a rare dragon he has never even seen in a book, Jin decides not to disturb it while it's sleeping. Just then, he hears someone shouting and sees an awfully thick elf being followed by two freaky losers. Jin notices that she seems to be coming this way and tries stopping her, letting the elf know that there's a dragon nest nearby. The elf, with tears in her eyes, tells Jin that the humans ambushed her, but before Jin can even say something, one of them puts a sack on her and comments on how much of a hard time she gave them. However, when Jin tries to stop them, one of them questions if he wants to stand up for an elf and whether he wants to pick a fight with a soldier from Redonia army. But Jin replies, asking them to calm down as they shouldn't be making any noise. But he seems to be pretty late as the dragon is already awake. Both the soldiers soil their pants and run away, not wanting to get eaten. This annoys Jin as they leave after waking up the dragon and tries to go for his sword, only to realize he left it back home. Suddenly, the dragon starts dashing towards the elf, and having no other choice, Jin stabs it with the knife he has and cuts the dragon from top to bottom, ultimately defeating it. Following that, Jin is relieved that the dragon had some weak spots along with the fact that the elf girl seems to be okay. He then frees her, and just as she is about to thank him, the sight of a man covered in blood causes her to faint. Sometime later, Eri apologizes for losing her cool as she never expected a human to help him. Jin also begins to wonder what kind of soldiers harass people like that and can't understand why he's at a place where elves are getting attacked by humans. While the dragon meat is being prepared, Jin asks Eri about her wounds, saying that he only had a low potion to give to her. Eri realizes that they don't hurt anymore and wonders if this is healing magic. She then begins to panic and asks if someone discovered a way to use one of the lost arts, the healing magic. But Jin disagrees and tells Eri that it's just a low-ranked potion that is sold at every store. But to his surprise, this is the first time Eri has seen a potion, while Jin begins to wonder if this world believes in fairy tale nonsense like magic. Eventually, he decides to do some exploring after getting Eri to safety and notices that the meat looks ready and tells Eri to dig in, but before she can even refuse, Jin takes a bite and comments that the umami flavor fills his mouth with every bite and calls it a good catch. Furthermore, he asks Eri if she doesn't like meat, to which she replies that this meat looks pretty expensive, only to be told that it's the meat of the dragon he just eliminated. Hearing this freaks her out, and Jin elaborates that she missed it because she was in a bag. He also mentions that there is more meat he can carry and tells her to have some if she wants. However, Eri gets excited knowing that monsters still live in this forest and tells Jin that she won't be eating it and instead wants him to sell some of it for her village. With a waterfall running down her face, Eri tells Jin that her village is having a lot of trouble with food, causing him to stop and realize that he has been devouring the food himself in front of a starving hot chick. Thanks Jin for giving her some of the meat and wonders if he's sure that he doesn't want anything in return, to which Jin agrees, saying that he will be leaving soon anyway. Additionally, he'd rather have her enjoy the food than eat it all alone. Jin then asks Eri about the forest, as even though it's so bountiful, they haven't run into a single monster. Eri replies by letting him know that there were once many animals until a huge dragon showed up and ate them all. Apparently, it was one of the largest dragons called Zerdodon, which has a red body, massive fangs, and scales tougher than iron. Redonia sent waves of warriors to defeat the dragon, but they stood no chance and left the forest alone. As the animals were gone, the village was left without food, and now, the kingdom is forcing them to buy scraps from them at an absurd price. Hearing this reminds Jin that the dragon he slayed was also red, wondering if it was a baby. Eri freaks out thinking about the fact that Zerdodon might be popping babies. Meanwhile, Jin figures that fighting a large dragon with his current equipment would be really challenging, and while he still has the potions and return scroll, He doesn't plan on wasting such expensive items on something so ridiculous. Eventually, the two of them arrive at Eri's village, but before that, Eri told Jin that even though she knows that he's an incredibly kind person, the others are going to be scared seeing him, which is why she forcefully covers Jin's head in order to hide his ears. While he thinks that this precaution must be because of the elves always getting oppressed, the two of them finally arrive at the village chief's house. But to their surprise, an old granny runs out, telling Eri to head to her house as her mother has collapsed. Jin tells Eri not to worry about him and quickly go. With that being said, the two of them run to Eri's house where they find the village chief, who informs Eri that her mother's condition has suddenly deteriorated. Apparently, someone found her collapsed in front of the door, and she hasn't gotten much better since. This causes Eri to apologize for leaving her alone, reassuring her mother that she managed to get them some meat, and that she'll surely get better after eating some. Hearing this statement makes the chief question what Eri means and who exactly is the musclehead she brought along. Eri introduces Jin, telling her that he had a lot of meat and decided to share some with her. She further says that there's still more in the forest and they'll need a cart to bring it to the village. Still concerned, the village chief asks Jin how much he wants to sell it for, to which he replies that he doesn't need anything in return as he isn't a merchant but a hunter. But to his surprise, the chief doesn't seem to know what a hunter is, causing Jin to wonder where in the world he is. Nonetheless, the village chief, Lily, thanks Jin for saving Eri's life and even giving them food, and gets told by Jin not to worry about it. Lily further mentions that she's really glad that Eri made it back in time safely, and thanks Jin once again for making it possible. When Jin questions what she means by returning in time, Lily replies that the doctor said her mother doesn't have much time left, and when Jin asks if the sickness is really that bad, Lily lets him know that they tried herbal treatment, but it had little effect, and according to the doctor, this sickness is caused by lack of animal nutrients. Currently, all they have is expensive dried meat from Redonia. This makes Jin realize how grave the situation is, and he's aware that some dragon meat won't be making much of a difference. Eri then informs Lily that the reason she got help today is because the kingdom's soldiers were offering a deal that could help the village with their debt. When Lily asks about the kind of deal it was, Eri replies that in exchange for a young elf rocking their bed, the soldiers promised to reduce the interest. As she couldn't make the decision alone, Eri decided to consult Lily, but as soon as she told this to the soldiers, they tried kidnapping her. Hearing this statement even wakes her sick mother, who advises Eri to never get involved with the humans. However, this only makes her condition even worse, and Lily runs out to call the doctor. Jin realizes that her internal bleeding can't be fixed with meat, and she requires urgent treatment. He instantly opens his potion kit and ultimately decides to use an elixir, as anything else won't work. Following that, he asks Eri to step aside and makes her mother drink that elixir, which luckily ends up making her condition much better, allowing her to sleep peacefully. While Jin figures that this should be enough, Lily comes back running, asking about the situation. Jin lets her know that he gave her an elixir that can heal any wound or illness as long as the person is still alive. This makes Lily wonder if this is some legendary healing magic, to which Jin replies that Eri asked him the same thing, and says that it's not magic, but a medicine anyone can use. After that, he decides to take a leak, but before he goes, Eri calls out his name, thanking him with tears in her eyes. However, as soon as he shuts the door, Jin begins thinking how an elixir is something anyone can use, but it still comes at a huge cost. He then begins to regret using it, as it cost a whole year of earnings to buy one of these. Apparently, it can only be produced in tiny amounts by the most skilled alchemists. However, if he had used one of the low-grade potions, there's a good chance that she would have suffered until the end, which makes him believe that he did a good thing, and that he shouldn't let something like this haunt him. Jin further thinks that he might run into the dragon if he goes back to the forest, and without his sword or elixir, he isn't really confident. But if he uses his return scroll, he can probably still get home and won't see this place ever again. With that being said, he informs the girls that it's time for him to leave. Additionally, he decides to leave the rest of his potions with them, advising them not to let things get as bad as with Eri's mother, as they are not as strong as the elixir. But before that, he wants them to eat meat and get better. When Eri argues that he might need the medicine for his trip home, Jin informs her that he has a way to get back immediately. Suddenly, they hear commotion outside, and after taking a look through the window, Lily notices the soldiers saying that they have come to relay a message from the king. Jin recognizes him as the guy who was chasing Eri and thinks how he's acting tough for someone who ran like a little coward. That soldier then reminds the elves that the repayment deadline is tomorrow, and that they'll be expecting 50,000 gold coins. Jin freaks out after hearing the debt amount and gets told by Lily that this is exactly right. While Jin figures that he can buy 3 elixirs with that amount, Lily mentions that they had to take loans as they couldn't afford what they were selling, but the interest rates are ridiculous. Even though Jin feels sorry for them, he can't do much as a stranger and believes that even the meat and potions won't help that much. Meanwhile, the soldier further adds that if they don't have that much money right now, the kingdom is willing to postpone the deadline if they agree to be their slaves. 1 slave equals 1 day. All the elves are shocked to hear this, and Lily realizes that it's the same offer they made to Eri. Having no other choice, Eri decides to go if they keep their end of the bargain. But Lily instantly refuses, saying that her mother doesn't want her to go, and adds that nothing good will come of going along with the humans' demands. Apparently, it has been this way for decades since Lily's father was the chief, and Redonia's oppression is something that won't end so easily. At the same time, Jin begins thinking and figures that he might be able to take those soldiers with him if he uses his return scroll. But Lily mentions that it won't work as they'll just send even more men next time. Furthermore, she says that she'll handle the humans herself and thanks him for the meat and medicine. Afterward, Lily asks Eri to take Jin outside through the back entrance, and while walking away, he asks Lily and Eri's mother to stay safe. After arriving back in the forest, Eri takes off the hood Jin was wearing and tells him to come back if he ever needs something. With that being said, she says her goodbyes, and after advising Eri to stay strong, he disappears out of her sight using the return scroll. Before long, he returns to his original world, only to find himself standing on the cliff, about to fall again. Following that, he looks at the hole and thinks how it contains unknown plants, monsters and elves that have never heard of hunters. However, he also believes that there's no reason for him to go back and he did everything he could. With that being said, he returns home and gets greeted by a little girl who lets him know that she's hungry, asking Jin to make some food. Just then, another girl sits on top of the first one, letting her know that she's bothering Jin. Apparently, they might look like little girls, but they are actually legendary monsters named Slirin the Slime and Ryu the Dragon. For some reason, they became attached to him and started living at his house. Afterward, Ryu tells Slirin to get off Jin, to which she replies that she's not that heavy, only to notice Jin struggling to breathe as Slirin's real body is quite massive. In reply, Slirin mocks Ryu for not being able to hide her wings, causing her to get furious. Luckily, Jin breaks the fight by telling Slirin that she's not heavy and complimenting Ryu's wings. Soon after, he makes food for the two of them and thinks that having food with the two of them like a family after coming home from a hard day at work is the sort of life he has been given. While he's lost in thought, both Slirin and Ryu manage to steal some food from his plate, and after seeing it empty, he figures that he has eaten everything and goes to do the dishes. Later that night, Slirin comes up to Jin, saying that he's acting weird, and Ryu adds that he didn't drink any booze, which means that something is troubling him. Slirin also mentions that he's spacing out a lot, and while his body is here, his mind seems to be somewhere else. While Jin thinks about how the elf's problem is something he shouldn't get involved in, Slirin advises him to do what he thinks is right, and Ryu figures that he's worried because he left something unfinished. This helps Jin make up his mind, and he walks away, promising to eat no meals until he's done everything in his power. Afterward, he heads to the storehouse, and knowing that he might have to fight the dragon, he restocks the potion, the elixir, and his trusty sword as well. After he's all geared up, Jin once again jumps down the hole, deciding to do whatever he can. Luckily, Jin ends up in the elves' forest again and asks everyone to wait for his return. On the other hand, Lily offers all the money she has to the soldiers, but they are still unsatisfied and ask Lily if she's taking the kingdom's soldiers for fools. However, Lily apologizes, saying that this is all the villagers have, asking them to have mercy on them. Suddenly, everyone hears a human asking them to let him through, and that human turns out to be Jin, who puts the bags of gold in front of the soldiers, letting them know that it's 50,000 gold coins just like they asked. Both Eri and the Mustache Master get shocked while Jin elaborates that he's going to pay off this debt of theirs. All the elves begin to wonder why a human is doing this, and the soldiers let their captain know that the coins are real and there are 50,000 of them. This causes that soldier to question Jin the reason he's helping the elves and from where he got that much money from. Jin replies that he doesn't need a reason to help as he remains a hunter, no matter where he goes. He further adds that he has been saving this money for retirement, but buying a village with thick elves isn't the worst investment either. While that human begins to wonder what being a hunter means, one of his men recognizes Jin as the person who defeated Zerdodon earlier. In the end, he is forced to return to the kingdom, but before leaving, he lets Jin know that he isn't done with him yet. Following that, Lily calls out Jin's name, and he hands her over the receipt of the debt. But she lets him know that it's not possible for them to pay him back as they don't have enough money. When Jin reassures her that she doesn't need to pay him back, Lily questions how they are supposed to repay their debt to him, as he was considerate enough to hide his human form, and even did so much for them. After thinking a bit, Jin lets them know that he couldn't enjoy his dinner the night he left, and was spacing out, thinking about them. Which is why he's only doing this for his own satisfaction, just so he can head back and enjoy his life with his family. Furthermore, he advises them to find new hunting grounds and trading routes to generate more wealth and use those coins for the betterment of the village. With tears in her eyes, Lily thanks Jin, saying that his kindness knows no bounds. Afterward, Jin mentions that the dinner is going to taste extra delicious now that this quest is done, and Eri invites him to stay the night and eat dinner with them instead. She then asks Lily if it's okay, to which she agrees, telling Jin that they want to treat him like a hero and hold a festival in his name. Later that day, while everyone enjoys dancing and celebrating, Jin is glad that it all worked out and remembers last night when Slirin and Ryu saw him in the storehouse, forcing himself to use all his savings and thinking that it might affect their food expenses. This resulted in the two of them appearing right behind him, letting Jin know that giving them less food is the one thing they won't forgive. This is the reason Jin has decided to work extra hard the moment he gets back. Elsewhere, in the Raydonia Kingdom castle, the king freaks out after hearing that the story of a man defeating Zerdodon wasn't something the soldiers made up, and his assistant further adds that it's the same man who showed up at the village and paid off their entire debt. The king begins to panic as they rely on the threat of Zerdodon's existence to offer protection to the village and suck them dry to boost the kingdom's economy. Eventually, he orders his men to show the elf village, and that man what happens when they go against the king. His assistant agrees, reassuring the king that their men are already headed there on some of their fastest horses. Meanwhile, fire erupts in the back of the village and starts spreading quickly. Eri tells Jin to escape, but he instantly refuses, saying that he's going to help put it out. Simultaneously, Lily tells everyone to pray to the water spirits, and with their combined efforts, they manage to use the water blessing. While Jin is surprised at first seeing them create water without a physical medium, he quickly finds out that it didn't work, and the fire hasn't subsided at all. This results in him wanting to help instead of admiring their skills and asks Lily if there's a lake to the northeast. When Lily agrees, calling it the Okia Lake, Jin decides to head there as he'll be needing that water. With that being said, he leaves, telling Lily to trust him and evacuate everyone. As he's running towards the lake, Jin suddenly smells something that doesn't belong in the village and notices two knights on their horses running away. He doesn't waste any time running after them and manages to open one of the barrels they are carrying. As expected, oil starts flowing out of the barrel, causing Jin to question why they are running from the village, spilling oil everywhere. The knights freak out and decide to drop the barrel so that Jin wouldn't follow them anymore. Realizing that he has no other choice, Jin decides to head to the lake and believes that this much water should be enough. Jin then dives into the lake and figuring that the village is around 35 meters away, he begins changing the direction of the flow of water using his sword and manages to send a ton of it towards the village. Thanks to his efforts, it begins raining in the village, which puts out the fire, causing everyone to celebrate and Lily to wonder if Jin did this. He also gets relieved seeing that the smoke is disappearing, and before long, Eri arrives and informs Jin that the downpour puts the fire out and everyone is safe. She then notices the oil barrel on the ground and lets Jin know that an elf who was near the rear gates when the fire broke wants to talk to him. That boy elf then informs Jin that he saw two Redonia soldiers on horses who were running around with torches despite it being the middle of the day. He believes that they are the ones who set the forest on fire, but as there is no proof, Redonia won't ever trust an elf's word. Jin reassures the elf that he trusts him and that he has proof. After that, he shows him the oil barrel on the ground, saying that this is what they were carrying, and even though he managed to catch one of the soldiers, they dropped the barrel and ran away. After hearing this statement, both the elf boys begin to question why they have to go through this, and Eri fails to control her tears as well. Jin also begins thinking that the knights laid their hands on something he was protecting and figures that they really don't know what hunters are. Afterward, he asks Eri which way is the Redonia kingdom, and when she questions if he plans to march in there alone, Jin tells her not to worry about him as fools like them deserve a little treatment from the belt. Following that, Eri shows him the way to Redonia kingdom, and lets him know that she came all the way because she's worried about letting him do this alone. She further warns him, saying that they are strong, well-equipped soldiers and even have a magic squad with powerful magicians. Jin reassures Eri that he'll keep it in mind and asks her if it's okay to use the boulder in front of them. Suddenly, he stabs it with his sword and ends up picking it up on his own. Meanwhile, a soldier comes running to the king, informing him that the hunter is attacking them on their own. The king mentions that Jin must be underestimating them and gets told by the soldier to at least take a look. After using the monocular, the king's soul nearly leaves his body when he sees a single man carrying a giant boulder all on his own. He can't believe how a human can lift something like that and orders his men to ready the defenses while he hides in the dungeon. Furthermore, he mentions that Jin can't scare them with such cheap performance, and his assistant reassures the king that their magic squad will handle everything. This reminds the king that they have the best magicians, and the assistant adds that they'll have them cast magic on their vanguard, creating an impenetrable wall. But Jin still tries to threaten them. He'll be met with hellfire. This ends up making the wimpy king confident, who is now sure that they will be burning both the village and the hunter today. Suddenly, one of his men appears, letting the king know that Jin is at the gate and is asking a question. Apparently, Jin wants to know if they are the ones who set the elf village on fire. However, the king doesn't take this seriously, saying that this won't save him and orders the archers to fire at him. As expected, Jin replies by throwing the boulder at the castle, breaking the walls and almost ripping the king's head off in the process. Jin then thanks them for the warm welcome, saying that the fire magic was quite a captivating show, but he wouldn't call it anything more than a party trick. Having no other choice, the king ends up surrendering and apologizes to Jin, asking if he wants money or a title. Jin questions if the king thinks he's in a position to beg and reminds him of how he treated the elves. Additionally, Jin lets him know that he disturbed the peace in the village he bought using his own money, and this is what happens when someone lays hands on a hunter's possession. For now, he decides to call it even, and when Eri mentions that he's quite destructive, Jin replies that he was holding back as the only thing he did was destroy their castle. After returning home, Lily asks Eri about the negotiations and gets told that they ended up using brute force. While she wonders if this is a problem, Jin notices the dragon's head on the table. He informs everyone that it's the same dragon he defeated and is glad that they managed to transport it to the village. Everyone gets surprised hearing this, and even Lily asks what he just said, causing Jin to wonder if it was some sacred species that should never be hunted for food. Afterward, the bookworm amongst the elves takes a good look at the dragon's head and announces that this is Zerdodin's head. Everyone begins celebrating hearing that the dragon is dead, while Jin begins to wonder if that tiny dragon really was the so-called massive dragon everyone was worried about. He starts feeling embarrassed about being worried about it and gets thanked by Lily, who mentions that the village will be able to live in peace from now on, and while it'll take some time, the forest's ecosystem will recover as well. Seeing this situation makes Jin think that all he did was run around and eliminate a bunch of monsters, which is similar to his usual quest, but as it made everyone else happy, he counts it as a good vacation. With that being said, Jin decides to go back to the hotties waiting for him at home, but gets interrupted by Eri, who lets him know that she has a request. After that, the village had a big farewell party, and he returned back with a return scroll, but this time, not empty-handed. When he returns home, the girls get excited and Slyrin runs to greet him, only to stop midway and freak out, asking who that is. Apparently, Jin brought Eri along, and lets the girls know that she will be living with them, adding the fact that she's from a faraway land, asking them to show Eri the ropes. Jin then introduces both Slyrin and Ryu, but they don't seem very happy about this and ask Jin if that girl is his bride. Eri gets embarrassed and mentions that they haven't gone that far, while Jin reassures them that she just wanted to study a different culture, and that all they need to do is show her around. Still concerned, Slyrin mentions that Eri is really pretty, and with a chest bigger than her head, she'll definitely steal Jin from them. She then wonders if they should just eat her, but gets told by Ryu that Jin will get mad at them. Suddenly, he appears right behind them, asking them if they are hungry and deciding to make some food for them. Eri suggests helping Jin out, as since she'll be staying there, she needs to learn about the house. Jin likes the idea and tells the girls that now, even when he's not home, they'll have someone who can make them food. This activates a neuron in their head, and they decide to let Eri live as long as she makes them food. Later that night, Eri manages to finish the elves' special curry rice, telling them that she called out to the spirits of this world and spiced it up with healthy magic. However, Jin can't quite figure out what in the world she did to turn the curry into a blue color. However, Slyrin doesn't seem to care and decides to give it a taste. As soon as she takes a bite, Slyrin sees a glimpse of God and falls onto the floor. While Ryu goes to get a potion, Eri begins apologizing for not making it good enough, but gets told by Jin that making mistakes is a part of learning. Meanwhile, Slyrin is a bit upset, as even though everyone calls her a gluttonous ruler, there is something even she can't eat. The next day, Jin takes Eri out to show her the town, where she gets impressed seeing so many different races coexist together. Eri mentions that she never could have imagined that such a world existed, and Jin suggests stopping by the Hunters Guild, to which she agrees. However, at the Hunters Guild, a hunter is furious and keeps on asking the receptionist about the quest that Jin is on today, but she lets him know that such information is confidential. He gets annoyed and lets her know that because of Jin, hunters like him from neighboring towns are at their wits' end. Additionally, he believes that Jin is spreading false information about himself to steal jobs, such as him beating half the royal army or eating dragons for lunch every day. Because of this, he can't stand it and needs to teach him a lesson. Suddenly, Jin appears behind him, asking that hunter to calm down for a moment. Jin further adds that the receptionist manages all the hunters in this town, so he can't let him trouble her anymore. Not recognizing who Jin is, he gets annoyed and mocks Jin for being so laid back when all his jobs are being taken away. After that, he grabs Jin by his collar, and while the receptionist tries breaking the fight, that hunter prepares to land a punch on Jin. However, Jin easily manages to dodge that punch and kicks his legs, causing that hunter to fall and crash into the nearby supplies. The receptionist mentions that it was totally uncalled for, as he could have taken it outside, to which Jin replies that he had no time to think. Simultaneously, Eri appears and introduces herself to the receptionist, letting her know that she will be freeloading at Jin's house for the time being. Jin also mentions that Eri will be picking up quests, causing the receptionist to get excited and tell Eri to stop by any time. Additionally, she calls Jin a playboy for already keeping 2 girls at his house, but still having the need for more. Nonetheless, she lets him know that she has some commissions for him. After taking a look, Jin mentions that he'd like anything that's close by and he can do solo. Meanwhile, that other hunter finally realizes that the person in front of him is Jin and thinks how he is playing him for a fool. Furthermore, he remembers that he is the neighboring town's top-class hunter named Boron, who came to give the rumored Jin a scare, as if they let him do as he pleases. The rest of the hunters will be stuck getting the same wage as a TikTok financial guru. For a hunter to make a name for themselves, they need to complete difficult or important quests. But lately, both nobles and common folk have been submitting requests specifically for Jin, and as a result, there's nothing left for the others. Realizing that Jin is way too quick in completing quests, Boron figures that Jin must be using hacks, which is why he needs to beat him up and force Jin to disclose all his dirty tricks. Meanwhile, Jin agrees to take an easy S-rank quest for now and asks Eri to go home alone, to which she agrees, wishing him good luck for his quest. Simultaneously, the receptionist notices that Boron has left, which frustrates Jin as he didn't even clean up after himself. Elsewhere, Eri is on her way home and is getting stalked by Boron, who remembers that she lives with Jin along with 2 other girls. As Jin left for an S-rank quest, Boron figures that he won't be back for a while, which is why this is a perfect chance for him. Boron doesn't care if this is something underhanded, as all he needs to do is take those girls hostage and beat Jin into submission when he's unable to do anything. With that being said, he appears on the backside of the house, calling Eri dumb for leaving the back door open. Suddenly, Ryu opens that door, slamming it on Boron's face and later asking who he is. he shamelessly introduces himself as Jin's friend, and to his surprise, Ryu instantly falls for his lies and ends up inviting him inside to wait for Jin's return. Now that the infiltration is successful, Boran notices that Ryu is a demi-human, and as demi-humans are tough to deal with when they resist, he decides to strangle her unconscious. Suddenly, a loud growling noise alerts the two of them, followed by Slirin's appearance, who lets Ryu know that she's really hungry. Boran is relieved after finding out that she's pretty young and decides to take them both out at once. Meanwhile, Ryu tells Slirin to eat Eri's cooking if she's hungry, to which Slirin replies that she can't eat that which is pissing her off. Seeing the slime all around her freaks Boran out, and he decides not to take her lightly. Whereas Ryu mocks Slirin for always acting cute in front of Jin, saying that she'll show him the real her this time. Slirin questions if she can really do that and decides to just end Ryu's life, causing both of them to get in their fighting positions. Surrounded by slime and flames, Boran begins to regret his decision, wondering what he got himself into. While the two of them continue fighting each other, Boran gives up and runs away, asking for help. Ryu mentions that it was Jin's friend, and they both realize that Jin's would be really angry if they scare his friend away. To prevent this, both of them start running after him. At this point, Boran realizes that this is a monster house, and that he shouldn't have involved himself with such a freak. On the other hand, Eri is busy cooking another one of her monstrous dishes, and is sure that it'll be good this time. Once again, she made the elven curry rice, and is sure that it has no flaws compared to the first one. Simultaneously, Boran struggles to find the exit and runs into the kitchen, only to bump into Eri, who has the curry pot in her hands. Realizing that the noise came from the kitchen, both of them hurried to the kitchen, only to find Eri on the ground along with Boran, who's fully covered in the curry she made. Slirin asks if he's okay, and realizing that he's a guest, Eri begins freaking out. Just as the others are starting to panic, Boran gets up and asks about the exit, as all he wants is to get out of the house alive. Additionally, he questions what this gooey, spicy thing is and notices his vision warping, along with a growing difficulty to breathe. Believing that he might be poisoned, Boran runs towards the exit, causing all three girls to rush after him in order to stop him from going outside. Seeing three terrifying creatures after him, Boran tries his best to escape, and coincidentally, Jin returns home at the same time. With a glimpse of hope, Boran begs Jin to save him, making Jin question if this is a new kind of monster. The girls let him know that it's his friend, but not remembering being friends with a curry monster, he decides to hand him in to the guild for now. Later that day, Jin suggests going on a quest together with Eri and proposes starting with a simple D-rank job. Slirin manages to find a job exterminating orcs, and when asked the reason, she mentions that they are pretty nice and crunchy. Meanwhile, Ryu also finds a job collecting herbs at the mountain top, saying that the open sky is heaven for a dragon, but gets denied by Jin. Lastly, Eri shows him 2 F-rank jobs she found, and realizing that both of them are close by, he agrees to take them. Afterward, Eri notices the missing section on the board and asks Jin about it, who lets her know that it's for all the hunters who went missing after taking a quest and haven't returned within a given amount of time. He further mentions that one would be lucky to find them alive, and quests like these are basically them looking for the missing person's corpses. Eri freaks out hearing the word corpses and figures that she'll die if she makes a mistake, but gets reassured by Jin that with Ryu and Slirin supporting, she's got nothing to worry about. After Eri's all geared up and has gathered all the necessary supplies, she mentions that she's ready for her first quest. But to her surprise, they easily manage to complete both the F-rank quests, and when Eri comments on how she was expecting this to take longer, Ryu replies that F-rank quests are a walk in the park. Afterward, the 2 monster girls mention how they like this place as it's pretty nice and the ground is also damp. Meanwhile, Eri is glad that they finished the quest safely, and simultaneously, Jin returns with some firewood and gets surprised seeing his monster babes fast asleep. He then suggests making lunch while the others are asleep and decides to catch some more pigs, as they only needed 3 for the quest. Suddenly, all the pigs start squeaking, and at the same time, Jin and Eri notice a lot of dust in the air, making them believe that something is headed this way. Just then, an S-rank monster named the Black Flame Ox appears in front of them. As expected, Eri wets her pants, seeing that it's even bigger than Zerdadin, but gets told by Jin that she's in luck as these guys are pretty tasty. Slirin also wakes up and gets excited after seeing the ox, saying that they will be having a feast tonight. But just as Jin is about to attack, he notices some arrows sticking to the ox's peaches and notices a group of hunters running after it, trying their best not to let it escape. Sadly, he has to give up as it's already taken. Eri then notices that they are the same people who were on the missing hunter poster, and Jin figures that they took too long trying to hunt the Black Flame Ox. But at the same time, she's glad that they are safe, and Jin adds that they are barely standing, and if things stay the same, they won't be able to take it down. He further says that they should go home if they're out of potions, as being stubborn won't do any good. Suddenly, one of those hunters tells her party members to look in that direction, and they instantly recognize Jin as the hunter who destroyed the Royal Capital's guild. Meanwhile, Eri asks if he isn't going to help them, to which he replies that even if he wants to, he can't because of the hunter code. Seeing Eri look confused, Slirin steps up and explains that the code is to never lay hands on a hunter's pretty, which is so well known that even kids know about it. She adds that no one likes a thieving rascal who takes what isn't theirs, and Eri agrees. Moreover, Jin says that he can't lay a hand on the ox until they give up on the quest. But they still seem to have that spark in them, and are not even close to giving up. While he tries motivating them, they start roasting him for staring at them, saying that everyone knows about his wrongdoings and reminding him that ox is their prey. While Jin gets depressed, Slirin and Ryu mention how the smallest dogs bark the loudest. Suddenly, the ox lifts its mouth above, freaking the hunters out. Furthermore, its mouth begins to shine, and Jin instantly realizes that it's about to unleash its flame breath. Simultaneously, Slirin prepares to defend everyone by eating all that fire, and just as the ox throws flames from its mouth, Slirin uses a shadow shield to protect everyone and manages to devour all the flames thrown towards them. Eri gets shocked seeing something the wimpy elves can only dream of doing, later realizing that Slirin seems to be enjoying it quite a lot and wants the ox to feed her even more. Jin mentions that Slirin is doing good and wonders about the other hunters, to which Ryu replies that they are blocking it as well, but their shield won't hold on for that long. Meanwhile, those hunters realize that they are not ready for S-rank quests and figure that it's time to watch the ending credits. Eri begins to panic as well, and Jin mentions that knowing your limits and when to retreat is a vital skill for any hunter. But unfortunately, those hunters seem to be lacking this skill. Seeing the flames reminds Eri of the elves who turned into rare steak by the village fire and end up requesting the water spirits to lend her their powers. She then dashes towards the fire, completely ignoring Slirin's warning to not step outside her shield. But she continues running, believing that she won't lay a hand on their prey, as her powers wouldn't even be able to scratch it in the first place. After getting behind the four of them, Eri lets them know that she will protect them with her water magic and make another water shield on top of their physical one. But at the same time, she lets them know that they need to think of something, as she can't hold it off for long. The hunters begin to panic, wondering what they should do, when suddenly, Jin begins walking towards them with a pose that screams Aura Farmer and asks if he can have that walking hunk of meat, as he's really hungry. This comes as a surprise to those hunters, and they begin finding the quest paper. Meanwhile, Ryu mentions that the flame breath is finally over, but Slirin is aware that the next attack will be even stronger. As expected, the ox then starts charging towards them at full speed, and that hunter, who managed to find the quest papers, begs Jin to help them out, allowing him to have the ox. Seeing them hand over the quest surprises both Eri along with Slirin and Ryu, while Jin mentions that even though it took them long enough, that's all he needs. Now that their black flame ox is now his, Jin jumps towards the ox that's dashing towards the hunters, and with a single strike to its throat, he manages to bring it down, surprising those hunters who can't believe that one strike is all that it took. Both Slirin and Ryu give him a hug for securing the meat, while Eri also seems glad that the quest is now complete. Following that, Ryu doesn't waste any time carving it up, and Slirin decides to store it away inside herself right away, while she uses her internal storage skill to secure the meat. Ryu mentions that those hunters ran away without even thanking Jin, to which he replies that at least one of them was sorry, which is more than enough. He further adds that making mistakes is how novice hunters grow, and Slirin mentions that Eri went a bit overboard as well. Ryu comments that she thought Eri was crazy when she ran out, but Slirin argues that she still managed to hold back the flames. She also calls Jin a softie for not helping out, even though he had his sword out and everything, saying that the same goes for Eri, as she even gave those hunters her potions without leaving any for herself. However, Jin believes that it was due to Eri's selfishness that blew away their hostility and let them ask for his help. Back at the guild, they deliver everything that was asked to collect in the F-rank quest, and Eri gets complimented by the receptionist for doing a good job. But she isn't so sure herself if she was good enough, as all she did was rely on others the entire time. Slirin laughs, deciding to forgive Eri once, and points towards the receptionist, who is shocked to see that Jin managed to take down the Black Flame Ox while he was completing the other quests. As they got the meat thanks to Eri, the two girls promise to overlook her antics. Afterward, the receptionist lets Jin know that the guild master wants to talk to him, and after telling the girls to go on ahead without him, Jin asks Eri if she's alright, to which she agrees, saying that she recovered with a potion she had. Later that day, Jin meets up with the buffed guild master named Tarman, who happily greets Jin, and when asked if he always trains hard with those weights, Tarman mentions that one got to work them muscles after all the paperwork. With that being said, Tarman decides to cut to the chase and informs Jin that they have received a special rank quest for him. However, Jin doesn't seem so happy to receive one, as they involve never-before-seen monsters and national security concerns, which can be quite troublesome. Tarman questions if he's not interested, and when Jin agrees, Tarman lets him know that he has already stepped foot into this mystery. Afterward, he returns home and apologizes for taking so long, since that steroid addict sure talks a lot. Eri then mentions that tonight's dinner is especially fancy, and Jin agrees, telling everyone that today is a celebration for Eri and her first successful quest. While the others waste no time digging into the meat, Jin begins drinking and remembers his conversation with Tarman, who asked Jin about his retirement savings. Hesitant, Jin told him that he kind of made a big purchase recently, causing Tarman to advise Jin to save up, as one thing that he can't battle is old age. Jin agrees, saying that he notices his hairline receding day by day and wonders how long he can stay working as a hunter. This is the reason he has decided to keep working while he's fresh, so he can protect these carefree days with everyone. Tarmin then gets up, saying that Jin is now more mature than he used to be and gets told that this is what happens with age. Nonetheless, Tarmin suggests getting back to the topic and asks if Jin knows about the magical dragon Zerdodin, adding to the fact that he heard Jin was looking it up in their library. He further mentions that Zerdodin's name comes up in a certain old manuscript of the kingdom and reassures him that he's not going to pry about how Jin learned that name and won't report it to the king either. Still, if Jin is already involved with the Great Tome, Tarmin believes that he should at least hear what the quest is. With that being said, he informs that mysterious large holes have popped up all over the kingdom, and the king is desperate to find out what's going on with these pits. Jin figures that they want to dump it on them and wonders if the hole he fell into is one of the mysterious holes. At the same time, he's aware that if the kingdom already knows of the holes, then the natural next step for their greedy king would be to invade that world on the other side. Back in the present, Jin tells everyone that they need to talk as Tarmin told him about a new quest, but he is not sure what to do as it's unlike anything they have done before. Earlier, he asked Tarmin to give him more details about that quest and was told that this special ranked quest involves more than just investigation. Apparently, there are currently 5 holes that showed up and the kingdom already sent a lot of hunters, but the results are grim. Jin realizes that they didn't come back and probably weren't able to use the return scrolls. Tarmin further adds that the investigation is just a front, and the king wants the hunters to eliminate the other side because of the Great Tome prophecy. Seeing the confused look on Jin's face, Tarmin explains that it's a highly classified book of prophecies that the kingdom has been trying to fully decipher for many years. According to the book, 7 holes will open in the world with monsters known as 7 deadly sins lying dormant in each. The sins are the guardians of the rifts between worlds, and thanks to them, the holes don't merge with their world. One of these sins is the dragon of greed called Zerdodin. While Jin thinks that the midget-sized dragon didn't seem powerful enough to be able to move between worlds, Tarmin says that the king is afraid because of the prophecy's last verse that if the 7 sins are not defeated, the world will be brought to ruin. Jin realizes that the scale of this quest is way too huge and how this is a lot to handle for him. Nonetheless, Tarmin tells him to at least see the reward, and after taking a look, Jin's soul leaves his body as he can't believe that he'll receive 50,000 gold coins up front, and every time he investigates a hole, he'll get an extra 100,000. Knowing that he can fully recover the gold he spent and rack up a huge profit, Jin's greediness starts taking over. But he reminds himself that he didn't help the elves because he was expecting such a reward and decides to just think of it as justified compensation for his everyday efforts. Tarmin begins to worry as he has never seen Jin so excited. Eventually, Jin decides to accept the reward and tells Tarmin that he needs to come clean, later informing him that he already defeated Zerdodin. As expected, Tarmin is impressed knowing that Jin already managed to hunt down one of the sins and starts writing the report. Jin also adds that he found a peaceful village of elves at the bottom of the hole and tells Tarmin that he doesn't want any soldiers marching in there. He happened to have helped out that village and wants Tarmin to tell the king that it's under his protection. Tarmin agrees, saying that he's sure the king wouldn't dare lay hands on his property. Before long, they are done with the report and Tarmin mentions how this really helps move the investigation forward. Following that, he asks Jin if he plans to explore the other holes too. But Jin is sure that with this much money, he can make do with ordinary quests for the rest of his life. Rather than getting caught up in all that nonsense, he believes that it's safer to go back doing the same quests. Tarmin replies that as a guild master, he couldn't be happier about him clearing out the town's request and asks if that's really what Jin wants. He further adds that Jin has already proven that the return scrolls work once the sin of the hole is defeated, and now the kingdom will throw even more money, causing more hunters to rush into the holes. But they all will perish as they aren't as strong as Jin, and Tarmin believes that a hunter like Jin should be getting all the riches, fame and praise, and that he needs to be greedier for everyone's sake. Jin replies by telling Tarmin that he's really trying to rile him up today, and with that being said, he eventually decides to go. Back at the house, the girls also agree to go and begin wondering what the other sins taste like. When Jin asks Eri, she mentions that even though it seems dangerous, there might be others struggling just like the elves, and she would love to go and help them. The next morning, all 4 of them arrive at the base of Ragna Mountain and take a look at the other hole, and after holding each other's hand, they all jump into that hole together. Following that, the 4 of them find themselves falling down from the sky. Just then, Ryu goes ahead and transforms herself into a dragon, allowing everyone to ride on her back safely. Eri questions if this is her true form, to which she replies that her actual body is much bigger. Meanwhile, Jin also praises Ryu for saving their lives, as he didn't think they'd emerge so high in the sky. Both Slirin and Eri begin to mention how hot it is, causing Ryu to comment that the whole ground is covered in lava. Jin wonders how they are supposed to get info on the sin, as he doesn't see a single creature down there, while Eri adds that this world is filled with tons of mana. This causes Jin to wonder if mana is what she needs to perform magic. Just then, Ryu interrupts, informing Jin that there is a spot of greenery beyond the lava. Figuring out that there must be people there, he tells Ryu to land for some water and start their search. But as soon as they land on the ground, Slirin starts complaining about how it's even hotter on the ground, and Ryu mentions that she's quite hungry after all that flying. When Jin asks Eri if she's okay, she agrees, saying that she's not good with the heat, but something mysterious is giving her strength, which must be the mana. After roaming around for a while, Jin notices that he can hear a stream close by, and after following that direction, they end up discovering a huge spring which is in the middle of a barren land and contains cold water. Additionally, Jin notices an old building nearby and wonders if it's some sort of ruin. However, Ryu mentions that it looks like a shrine to her and a well-maintained one. Suddenly, a group of people arrived, armed with weapons and surrounded Jin, asking who he was and where he came from. One of them, pointy ear baddies, asks Jin if he's a minion of Yon the demon, saying that she will not let him lay a hand on their sacred land. But before he can even reply, they ask him to put his hands up and get on his knees, warning him not to do anything rash, or he's good as dead. Noticing their blue eyes and beautiful fins, Jin realizes that they must be water spirits, and the spring must be important to them. Nonetheless, he reassures them that they are not enemies, but before he even gets the chance to finish, both Ryu and Slirin use their powers and grab those people. Slirin doesn't go easy and begins choking that girl, causing her to struggle. However, when Jin tells them to stop as they can't just attack the native people, they both remind him that they are the ones who attacked them first, and besides, they are pretty hungry. Meanwhile, those men start mocking the girls for taking Raphine hostage, calling them cowards. Jin tries his best to make them understand that this is a misunderstanding when suddenly, another person appears, telling everyone to calm down. That person turns out to be Makaro, the chief of their village, and the father of that girl Slirin is choking. He mentions that Jin and the others don't seem to be a race from these lands and questions the purpose they have stepped foot here. Jin replies that they just came to get some water during their travels and are not looking to pick a fight. Furthermore, he asks Slirin to let Raphine go, asking Ryu to do the same. Makaro replies that they are a proud tribe of Undines and currently, they are preparing for a battle to protect this land. He further adds that if they claim to have not heard of Yon the demon, they should leave this place while they can, as the battlefield won't be so kind to them. While Jin gets a bit flustered hearing about the battle, all three of his chicks also seem to be pumped over this upcoming battle. When the Undines start to question why they are so excited, Jin introduces himself, saying that he's a hunter from a faraway kingdom of Rural, but as expected, Makaro has never heard of such a kingdom. Jin then informs him that he has only one objective, that is to defeat one of the 7 sins that will bring disaster to these lands, and figures that the demon they are talking about is likely the being they are planning to defeat. When he suggests joining forces, the Undines begin to hesitate, causing Eri to comment on how they don't seem to trust him at all. But Jin can't blame them, as the 4 of them showed up out of nowhere and started thinking how he should approach this matter. Makaro replies by first thanking Jin for the offer, and lets him know that this is a problem for Undines and the other races of this land, which is why he cannot let outsiders get involved. Makaro further asks if they even have the power to defeat Yon the demon, causing Jin to wonder how he should get them to trust him. Eventually, he proposes having a duel, and after handing his spear to Raphine, Makaro extends his hand, causing both of them to shake hands. While Eri is glad to see this, both the others can see that this isn't a friendly handshake at all. Following that, Makaro tightens his grip and begins judging Jin's strength without crossing blades, and after realizing what Makaro is after, Jin starts tightening his grip as well. As expected, Makaro realizes that Jin's grip speaks for itself and figures that he must have swung his sword countless times, as it's the hand any swordsman wishes to have. Not only that, but Jin manages to remain calm despite his bloodlust, which makes Makaro wonder how many times Jin has been on the brink of death. To everyone's surprise, Makaro then gets on his knees and asks Jin to lend them his strength, to which he instantly agrees. After ordering everyone to lower their spears, he takes everyone to their town, which Eri finds really pretty. But Raphine mentions that this place has completely dried out and informs them that she'll take them to the main state. Additionally, she apologizes for earlier, to which Jin replies that they showed up out of nowhere and it's only natural as they are prepared for battle. Just then, both the girls grab onto Raphine, introducing themselves. Raphine then mentions that she has experienced firsthand how strong they are and begs Jin to help their town. At the chief's house, the girls start complaining how thirsty and hungry they are, and luckily, Makaro brings them some ice-cold water, informing them that this place used to be brimming with water. But one day, a disaster struck their town when Yon the demon appeared before the salamander race, and their peace ended. When Jin asks if salamanders are spirits of fire, Makaro agrees, saying that there used to be 4 races which included the Undines, the salamanders, the air spirit called sylphs, and the earth spirit called the gnomes. For generations, they used to live with unity, but suddenly, Yon the demon showed up before the salamanders and with a powerful spell, covered the land with lava and urged the salamanders to eliminate the other races. Due to this, the salamanders destroyed their sacred water shrine, and now there's almost no water coming out of it. After that, the 3 remaining spiritual races joined forces to eliminate Yon, but even though they broke through the Fire Town's defenses and were able to reach Yon's castle, it was completely surrounded by giant flame golems, and all 3 races were utterly demolished. While they were able to escape without casualties, the gnomes had their equipment melted and the sylph's magic was ineffective, which forced them to leave the elimination force and flee. While it was a tough decision, Makaro believes that it was the best chance they had to keep their races alive. When Jin asks the reason, he didn't flee. Makaro replies that they are water spirits, and without a water source like the shrine, they can't move anywhere. This makes Jin realize that the situation is worse than he thought, and gets interrupted by Slirin, who mentions that she's really thirsty. Makaro decides to bring some more, but Jin asks him not to and tells Slirin to bear it a bit longer. However, she mentions that her throat is drier than your DM's and reminds him that slimes are mostly made of water. Luckily, Eri lets her know that she can conjure her some water and can make her as much water as she needs with water blessing. But Jin tells her to stop and asks if she's sure she can tell the Undines about her magic, to which she replies that it's okay as she wants to help out. With that being said, she offers to make water for the townspeople as well, and after receiving permission from Jin, she uses the water blessing. But to their surprise, the amount of water turns out to be unexpectedly high, causing her to drown the father-daughter duo as well as Jin. The chief's house starts looking like a 3M piss session, while Eri can't seem to understand why the water isn't stopping. Luckily, Slirin manages to chug all the water, and after they are done cleaning up, they notice Makaro lying on the floor, shocked. Jin questions if he's okay and Eri starts apologizing, but all he says is Goddess of Water, confusing the two of them. Afterward, he gets up and grabs Eri's hand, saying that the Goddess of Water has come to their rescue. Makaro further says that there's no mistaking it, as she's the only one who could conjure so much water with a simple prayer, and currently, they are witnessing the descent of the water goddess. However, Eri tries her best to tell him that it's a misunderstanding, and all he did was mess up her spell. But Makaro doesn't back down and mentions that if the salamanders had their god descend upon them, that it's natural that the water goddess would descend upon the Undies. He then asks Raphine if she thinks of it as a miracle as well, to which she agrees, adding the fact that Eri seems a bit too chill for a goddess. Just when Eri begins to wonder what they should do, Jin steps up and tells Eri that her identity is now exposed, and they have no choice but to save these people. He then compliments Makaro for his keen eye, saying that Eri truly is the water goddess who chose to grace them with her presence out of concern. At this point, both the father-daughter duo accepted this as the real goddess, and when Eri tries asking what he's doing, Jin replies by giving her a thumbs up. Afterward, Makaro makes Eri sit on the throne and announces that the water goddess has descended upon them. As expected, all the townsfolk start going crazy, thinking that she will save them from the evil clutches of Yon. Meanwhile, Jin mentions that he figures playing along, and having them think Eri is a goddess would make it much easier for them to subjugate the demon. Makaro then introduces these three as the attendants of Eri, pissing them off for not only losing to Eri in the chess department, but also receiving a lower status. Afterward, she calls Jin, and he makes sure to keep this act of her servant. Eri asks what he plans to do if they realize that he lied to their faces, and lets him know that the flood wasn't due to her own powers. It happened because of the extreme concentration of mana in this world, which made her magic go rampant. However, Jin finds it incredible, as this means she can be a powerful mage while they're in this world. But when she argues that it's out of her control, Jin calls it a trivial matter, as they will defeat Yon the demon and use her magic to help this town. Lastly, he advises Eri not to pretend to be a goddess and really become one instead. Not wanting to betray their hopes, Eri agrees to help the town until he has defeated Yon the demon. Afterward, Makaro asks Eri if she can be an oracle for their people, and when she agrees, the oldest Undine she has ever laid her eyes upon steps up and gets advised by Eri to take good care of his health. Ryu begins to think that being a goddess sounds like a pain, to which Jin agrees. Just then, Slirin mentions that she can smell something tasty, and Jin also mentions that it has a rich aroma of thoroughly cooked seafood. Raphine then appears, asking the three of them to have some food while they wait. Following that, a 3-star chief appears as well, reassuring them that their village is second to none when it comes to food. He then reveals all the dishes which look transparent and are called the wet water cuisine. Without wasting any time, Ryu begins slurping those noodles, and Slirin makes sure to devour all the meat buns, while Jin comments that he can never make something this good back at home. After finishing their portions, they mention how good it is and notice Eri staring at them, causing Jin to reassure her that they'll save some for her. The next morning, the three of them are waiting for Eri's arrival, and Jin mentions that she should be here with Makaro and the others at any moment. Before long, Eri appears sitting in the palanquin, shaking like an old washing machine. Ultimately, they put the palanquin down and Eri steps out, still dizzy from the ride. Both the girls comment on how that was a rough treatment for a goddess, while Eri suggests proceeding with the ceremony. Afterward, Makaro shows Eri the shrine where an endless stream of water used to gush forth. But the salamanders destroyed it, and now the blessed water has almost stopped. Eri figures that there used to be a magic circle there, and that it should be able to continuously summon water by combining the earth's energy with mana. But as part of the building was destroyed, the circulation of energy has been disrupted, but if they can restore the cycle, the water will start flowing again. Hearing this makes all the Undines excited. Meanwhile, Eri asks Makaro to raise the pillars and the priests to recite the incantations. Additionally, she asks Jin and the others to take it easy, to which they agree and let her know that she's pretty reliable, causing her to blush. She then remembers how she got to hear the feelings of everyone, and with the lava closing in on them, she'd like to solve their water problem. At the same time, she doesn't want to ride that palanquin again, which is why she's motivated to finish this quickly. With that being said, she begins praying and filling the magic circle with mana. Seeing her pray makes Makaro tell everyone to cheer for Eri, and they all begin shouting and dancing, reassuring her that they'll keep supporting her with their ancestral dance. Terrified of their performance, Eri decides to finish this quickly, and seeing everything that has been happening, Slirin mentions that she's glad she wasn't chosen to be the goddess. Before long, Jin appears, and when Ryu asks if Eri is okay, he agrees and mentions that once the people have their water, they need to defeat the sin, and for that, they need information on the demon. Suddenly, he notices a fisherman nearby and decides to go and check them out. Following that, he calls out to her, letting her know that this place might get flooded soon, to which she replies, asking him to let her stay for a bit longer. He then notices the fish she caught, and when that person asks who Jin is, he introduces himself as an ordinary old guy, letting her know that he isn't an Undyne as they have fins for ears. Jin then figures that she must not be an Undyne, to which she agrees, saying that she just came to check them out, to see what all the fighting's been about. She further mentions that the lava will swallow this place soon, and if all the Undynes die, she won't get to see them anymore, so she wanted to do it while she can. This makes Jin question if she's a salamander, but she disagrees, telling Jin that he's pretty close. He further adds that the Undynes won't die as he will take down Yon the demon himself. Furthermore, he reassures her that she can come and hang out again when the battle is over. Just then, he notices the water level rising and realizes that the shrine has been restored. That girl also starts walking away, letting Jin know that he can't defeat Yon the demon as he's just an average old guy. After coming back, Ryu asks about that person and Jin replies that she was one of the salamanders. When she questions why he let her go, Jin replies that it was just a young girl and that the salamanders are also victims of Yon's manipulation. On the other hand, Eri is tired after restoring the shrine and is thanked by all the townsfolk. Both Slirin and Ryu also praise her, while Makaron suggests having another grand festival to celebrate, but she's a bit too tired to go through any of this again and ends up losing her consciousness. Later that day, Makaro asks if the water goddess is going to be okay, and Jin lets her know that she's tired after using a lot of water and is currently resting in the estate as they speak. Afterward, he suggests coming back to the topic and asks Makaro about the route they took the first time they tried attacking Yon. Makaro mentions that they had to take a detour because of the lava, which drained their resources and stamina. With that being said, Jin asks to borrow one of Makaro's people who knows the surroundings well, and when he asks the reason, Jin replies that he's going to subjugate Yon the demon tomorrow. Jin further adds that Yon is a highly intelligent monster who's currently covering the world with lava to create a battlefield where he cannot lose. Additionally, Jin is sure that he's also sending spies to see if any of them are planning a surprise attack. Shocked, Makaro questions if Yon is spying on them, and Jin agrees, telling him that before the spies return and the place is swallowed by lava, he needs to defeat Yon. Do you think that Fisher Girl is actually Yon the demon who came to spy on them? Comment Hunter if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one. Seeing Makaro appear in front of them, the salamanders start making fun of him for trying to oppose Yon. However, with a huge smirk on his face, Makaro lets him know that the salamanders aren't the only special ones, as they now have the goddess of water and ice by their side. Realizing that the supernatural phenomenon was just now their doing, the salamanders were shocked and started calling them bloody masked devils. While Makaro gets furious hearing them call his lovely goddesses devils, Slirin gets excited and asks Jin if she can eat those salamanders. But sadly, Jin lets her know that they aren't the enemies to begin with and tells Makaro to calm down as well. After that, he steps forward and apologizes to the salamanders, asking if they can let them pass through. But when the salamanders straight up refuse, Jin advises them not to take one step away from their post, because as long as they are not in his range, they can enjoy a journey in the sky without being cut. After sending the salamanders flying, Jin and the others roam in the salamander town until they eventually reach Yon's castle, which turns out to be a cave instead. As they make their way inside, Makaro mentions that he was not able to drag Yon out last time as the monsters protecting him obstructed their path. Suddenly, several magma golems emerge from the ground and surround their party. Jin gives Ryu and Slirin free rein to go all out, as they are monsters, and without any hesitation, they both use their powers to deal with the golems in an instant. But before they can even take a breath of relief, more golems start emerging, and this time, the golems begin combining with each other to ultimately form a giant magma monster. Before long, that monster starts attacking them, and Slirin complains about how it's gotten so huge, especially since the cave's cramped enough as it is. Makaro's men almost wet their diapers, but get told by Makaro that they need to protect the goddess of water no matter what. After that, the monster starts attacking the cave's wall, making Jin realize that the ace won't hold at this rate. Seeing him look worried, Ryu asks what he is hesitating over, as something like this is a piece of cake if she and Slirin can transform into their true selves and freeze or swallow the whole cave. But Jin asks them not to, as if they were to return to their original form, the cave would surely collapse. Following that, he asks Eri to support him and mentions that they will handle the monster together. With that being said, Eri uses her water magic on Jin's sword. He then runs towards the magma monster and attacks its legs, causing the monster to fall onto the ground. Then, Jin tells Ryu to freeze the monster so it can't regenerate, and after the monster is frozen, Slirin devours it whole. While Makaro and the others call it a battle of gods, Jin notices Slirin standing on her own. When he walks up to her and asks if everything's alright, Slirin lets him know that the monster was insanely delicious and regrets not savoring it a bit more thoroughly. Now that the monster is defeated, Makaro informs Jin that the territory beyond is unknown to them and suggests they begin being extra careful from now. Just then, Raphine notices a salamander, but he instantly runs away after witnessing the battle and heads straight to Yon's room, letting him know that the Undines have led some unfathomable monsters to the cave. However, Yon doesn't seem to care and calls this situation a pain. Before long, the chief of the salamander appears in front of him, asking if the dude on steroids is the tribe chief Makaro. Judging by his reaction, Makaro figures that Yon must be inside and asks the salamanders to move aside. Just then, Yon himself makes an appearance and gets told by the salamanders to head back, as it's quite dangerous. While Makaro is surprised to see Yon as such a young girl, Jin remembers that it's the same girl from the lake. Yon also recognizes Jin as the old man and greets him at his castle, suggesting they take a seat to have a conversation. He asks the salamanders to take it easy. With that being said, he tells the Undines that he has the power to destroy them with the snap of a finger, but it's too much of a pain. This is why he is ready to give them a chance to live if they can worship him as a god, like the salamanders do. Makaro gets furious hearing this and lets Yon know that the god of Undines has forever long been the goddess of water. He further says that the Undines would rather die than bow their heads to a flat-chested shorty like her. Yon replies by saying that he doesn't like fighting, but it seemed like he had to destroy the world, so he was faced with a tough choice as well. Eventually, he ordered the salamanders to wreak havoc and destroy the land. If the world is inhabitable, it means it's pretty much destroyed to him. Makaro almost loses his cool hearing this, but gets told by Jin to calm down as Yon is just provoking him. Makaro tells Jin not to stop him as he can't forgive Yon for destroying their sacred shrine. At the same time, the salamanders begin yapping as well, calling the Undines inferior and telling them to surrender their lives. However, Jin asks them to make this even worse as he plans to make the two races stop fighting. This results in all of them arguing with each other, which ends up annoying Yon, and he tells the salamander chief to step aside. He further tells Jin that he liked him, but seeing that he brought the two monster girls along, they'll have no other choice but to fight. After that, Yon raises his hand and, after saying that he'll make them drop all that resistance, anger, and fighting spirit, uses the power called Blissful Depravity. Suddenly, everyone begins feeling pretty weak to the point that they struggle to even stay on their feet, except for Slirin, who is confused why everyone's like that. Yon mentions that their body and mind should feel like mud right now and advises them to leave while they can still move. Jin figures that she has the ability to steal other people's powers and realizes that she's truly a special rank monster, even though she looks like a short queen. After that, he tells Makaro to leave alongside Eri while Yon isn't taking this seriously, to which he agrees. Before leaving, Eri comments that while she can't fight alongside them, she wants to give them her water blessing to protect them from the heat. After receiving the blessing, Jin asks Ryu if she can move, and she agrees, letting Jin know that she still feels a bit heavy. Meanwhile, Slirin lets them know that she's feeling better than ever, only to transform into a pocket-sized slime. Yon starts laughing at Slirin, asking if she's sure about that, seeing as she can't even keep up her human form. He then calls Ryu an itty-bitty dragon and Slirin a hyperactive slime. Hearing this pisses them off, and they remind Yon that they are legendary monsters as well, to which he replies that it doesn't matter because as long as they are in this world, they can't escape blissful depravity. Still struggling to keep it together, Jin asks Yon the reason she wants to destroy the world. Yon lets him know that she was thrown into this world, and initially, she thought she'd just sleep until the day she died. But before long, a voice telling her to destroy the world started repeating in her head. Hearing this makes Jin realize that she is from another world, just like him, and calls Yon one of the 7 deadly sins. Yon also figures that Jin must have come from the hole and mentions that he shouldn't be poking his nose in other worlds. Jin replies that he has his own reasons and takes out his sword, telling Yon that while he feels bad hunting a monster in the form of a young girl, he doesn't have much of a choice, considering she's so set on destroying this world. Yon replies, telling Jin to prepare himself for death, adding the fact that she's pretty strong even though she looks like a little girl. Suddenly, the whole cave starts shaking, and without wasting anything, Jin tells the 2 monster girls to cover him and dashes towards Yon. He decides to strike Yon head-on, and to defend herself, she uses the flame wall. However, Jin manages to cut through that wall, surprising Yon, who can't believe he's so agile when he's under her spell. After Jin completely destroys the wall, Yon is left with no other choice but to dash. She keeps attacking him with other spells like Flame Barricade, but it doesn't seem to have any effects. This makes Yon question if Jin really is a human, to which he replies that if not for sheer willpower, he wouldn't even be able to stand, as his arms are numb. However, compared to a hangover after a fun night out with the baddies, this is no big deal. Hearing the word hangover makes Yon ask what kind of curse it is, to which Jin replies that she'll never know and lunges at her. In a desperate attempt, Yon uses her flame javelin and flame wall. At the same time, both Slirin and Ryu step in and use their powers to deal with her spells, allowing Jin to attack Yon and break the belt tied to her neck. After Yon falls to the ground, Slirin and Ryu realize that they are back to normal, while Jin puts his sword to Yon's neck, saying that he doesn't like eliminating humanoids and wonders if there's any other way to finish this. Just then, Yon's heart begins beating faster than before, and simultaneously, all the magma covering the world starts to disappear as well. All the traces of magma that disappear start coming back to Yon, and before long, she opens her eyes, leaving Jin and the others confused. She then wakes up, saying that she can't even use the blissful depravity, and finds Jin pointing his sword at her. Yeon instantly freaks out while both Slirin and Ryu jump on her, saying that it's the perfect chance to eat her, considering how weak she is right now. Eventually, Yeon gives in and surrenders, letting Jin know that it's his win. She further adds that dealing with the monster girls isn't an issue, but going against the Unk is like chasing death. Nonetheless, Yeon asks Jin if he came to this world after reading what was written in the Great Scriptures, to which Jin agrees and gets told by Yeon that she's quite knowledgeable in that area. When Jin mentions that he'd like to hear what she has to say, Yeon suggests striking a deal and says that she'll tell them secret information about the Great Scriptures along with a way to get rid of the 7 deadly sins if Jin agrees to let her go. However, Slirin warns Jin not to get deceived as she literally got a devil's tail, to which Ryu agrees, saying that devils are quick to lie. After thinking about it for a while, Jin agrees to accept the deal as they won't get many opportunities to gain such intel. Yeon celebrates by jumping on Jin's back and asking him to bring her back to his world. Jin is then told that the existence of the 7 deadly sins is erased once they get away from their world and figures that this is another way to deal with them. While he has agreed to bring her back, Slirin is disappointed that she won't be able to eat that devil, and Ryu continues to warn Jin that Yeon will betray him at the blink of an eye. But before that, Jin tells Yeon that he has a condition and says that she will have to live at his house for a while and will be provided with food as well. But to his surprise, there was nothing she looked forward to more than sleeping all day and having 3 meals. After they exit the cave, Eri freaks out to see him with Yeon. Jin tells Yeon that they need to settle things here before they return to his world. And when Yeon questions if she should reveal her true identity, Jin refuses and asks her to just follow his lead. Concerned, Makaro also asks Jin to explain what's going on, and Jin realizes that they just can't say that the water goddess defeated the fire god, as it will create a hierarchy among the gods, which will also affect the races following them. To deal with this, Jin, calling Eri the water goddess, informs her that the wrath of the fire god has been contained and that she can now finally return to the land of the gods. He then apologizes to both Makaro and the Salamander Chief for keeping them in the dark and reveals that Yeon and Eri are actually best friends. He further adds that due to a misunderstanding, the two of them have a fight, and Yeon stormed out of the godly realm. Her short temper burned up inside her and broke her into 100 fragments, which flew into 100 different worlds. As even one of those fragments was enough to destroy the world, the water goddess set out to collect all the fragments, and thanks to that, Yeon finally regained her temper and returned to the true state she's supposed to be in. To make it even more believable, Eri gives Yeon a tight hug, letting a flatty know what real jugs feel like. Now that both the goddesses have been reunited, Ryu and Slirin start clapping, and Jin apologizes to the Undines and Salamanders for the inconvenience. They all stare at him in shock, and all Jin can do is pray that they believe the lie he just cooked. Luckily, they take this story to heart and start to cry, saying that they have no reason to fight among themselves if the gods have made up. Eri then mentions that it's time for them to return to the gods' realm, causing everyone to bawl and question why they have to part with them. Afterward, the chief of Salamanders questions Yeon about how he caused all the magma to disappear, to which Yeon replies that she created the magma by turning mana into flame attribute, and as soon as she undid the conversion, it all vanished into thin air. Makaro also mentions that the sylphs and gnomes might return as well and tells the soldiers to prepare everything for a triumphant return. While the chief of those two races puts behind their differences, Yeon asks Eri if she's also pretending to be the water goddess, and seeing her panic, Yeon walks away, saying that she doesn't really care. On their way back to the town, Slirin notices that the air is much fresher than before, and soon after, they witness the town back to how it was meant to be. Everything seems to be floating on water now, and even Yeon is surprised to see the place where the Undines live. Everyone starts welcoming the water goddess back, and Raphine notices her childhood friend back in town as well. She then asks Jin if it's alright with him if they take the direct path to the estate, to which he agrees, although confused by what she meant. With that being said, she grabs his hand and dives into the water, where they all witness an entire city established underwater. After enjoying the short swim, they eventually reach the estate where Makaro is already present to greet them. He mentions that they would love to celebrate by having a banquet, but Jin is in too much of a hurry to leave. Nonetheless, he requests Jin to at least let them send them off, as there's already a huge crowd gathered on the main street. After Makaro and the others leave them alone, Jin takes a breath of relief and thanks Eri for playing along with the lie he had constructed. He further says that they will now be able to return home and asks Yeon to play the role of the fire goddess for one last time. Yeon agrees, mentioning how surprised she is to see everyone get excited over such a ridiculous story, and lets Jin know that he'd make for a good demon. This results in the monster girls asking Jin if he really wants to collect monster girls like Pokémon cards, as they can't see themselves getting along with her. Suddenly, Eri returns and says that she won't let Jin's story remain a complete lie. After taking off her helmet, she grabs Yeon's hand and mentions that if the two of them become friends, then there will be some truth to his story, which is why she'd love to have her go back with them. But to her surprise, Yeon ends up laughing, saying that she thought Eri was a weird mermaid or something. That said, Yeon informs Eri that she's not good at seeing through lies when there's no ill intent and puts forward her hand, hoping that the two of them get along. On the other hand, she could feel that the other two are emitting a lot of ill intent right now. Later, as they prepare to leave, all the citizens start cheering for them, and Makaro promises to pass on this story to the younger generation. Raphael also apologizes for doubting him at first, and after this warm see-off, they eventually leave the city and return to the jungle. Now, all that's left is to use the return scroll, and seeing something like this for the first time, Yon asks if it's going to get them out of this world. However, Jin replies that he's not sure as they haven't subjugated her yet, to which Yon replies that she's sure it'll be fine. Jin further adds that this might help them decipher the Great Tome as well, which comes as a surprise to Yon. But before she can say anything, Jin uses the return scroll, and as it gets activated, Yon lets him know that the Great Tome doesn't get deciphered, it gets filled in. According to her, the Great Tome is an incomplete grimoire. Following that, they return to their original world, and while everyone comments on how there's no place similar to home, Yon stays silent. This makes Jin question if she doesn't like this world, to which she replies that it's decent as it's got some nice mana, which makes it a good place to be a shut-in neat. Seeing as they are already outside, Slyrin suggests having lunch and taking out all the wet water cuisine they got from the Undines. However, Jin mentions that he needs to take Yon to the Hunters Guild, and when Slyrin warns him that they will end up eating everything by themselves, he lets her know that it's alright with him. After that, the girls start munching down the food while continuously bad-mouthing Yon, and when Eri advises them to get along with her, she instantly gets shut down by them. On the other hand, Jin pays a visit to Tarman and lets him know that he has explored the hole near the Ragna Mountains. Tarman is impressed by his speed as the other hunters from the capital haven't returned yet, which comes as a surprise to Jin as he wasn't aware that other hunters were investigating the holes as well. Tarman then questions Jin about the girl he brought along, to which he replies that she's a resident from the hole, and things led to him bringing her to their world. Meanwhile, Yon starts jumping on the chair, commenting on how it's softer than a boomer who can't take Gen Z humor, and when Jin tries telling her to behave, he gets told by Tarman that it's totally fine. Following that, he suggests getting back to the topic and mentions that the capital has deciphered more of the Great Tome. Tarman then begins reading it out loud, informing Jin about Yon, the demon who uses her powers to draw strength from others and gain control over the land. Furthermore, he mentions that her Yon has ash hair, dark brown skin, and eyes of amber. Simultaneously, Yon takes off her hood and reveals that she's the demon he speaks of. As expected, Tarman freaks out and questions Jin about it, forcing Jin to reveal that the girl in front of him really is one of the 7 sins, Yon. Jin then explains that they just need to get the sins out of their world, which means that there's no reason to actually eliminate them. For the time being, Tarman places his trust in Jin and decides to write the report. He gets told about everything that happened, from Jin joining forces with the Undines to making Yon surrender, which allowed him to come back safely. However, he is still shocked to hear that a frail-looking girl like her was able to put up a fight with a monster like Jin. This makes Yon tell Tarman that magic has nothing to do with body size, and Jin lets her know that their world doesn't have magic. Realizing that he doesn't know anything about magic, Tarman decides to leave that part out. But to his surprise, Yon agrees to show him some of her magic and, without holding back, uses her spell called the Flame Javelin. Fire arrows start flying around the room, burning everything in their way. Even though Tarman's office slowly burns to a crisp, he can't help but be impressed after seeing magic for the first time. After Jin manages to extinguish the fire, Tarman mentions that they usually need a fire attribute weapon for flames, which makes magic pretty useful. But at the same time, he is unsure if they can trust someone so destructive. Jin reassures Tarman that while he doesn't know if Yon is malicious or not, he will take full responsibility if she causes trouble in this town. Although Tarman trusts Jin, he is sure that if the king were to show interest in her, it wouldn't end peacefully, as the king might come looking for Yon to help him decipher the Great Tome. This results in Yon revealing that the Great Tome isn't something that can be deciphered, so bringing her wouldn't be of much help. Seeing the confused looks on their faces, Yon further adds that the Great Tome only has a bunch of random symbols, and it's an incomplete grimoire that is still being written. Tarman argues that there's no way it's possible as the Great Tome is guarded in the deepest part of the kingdom, which makes it impossible for someone to add anything to it. But Yon argues that the Great Tome they have is nothing but a replica as the original one belongs to the master who gave life to the 7 sins. Whenever the master writes something in it, the contents are transferred to the replica. This makes Jin wonder if the contents of the tome are the master's prediction, and Yon replies that there are 2 types of text in the tome. First, the events that have already happened in the past, and second, the events that are likely to happen in the indefinite future. In other words, the master can peer into fate itself, and the Great Tome is his dear diary. Tarman begins yelling at Yon, asking her about the man's whereabouts and his goals. However, Yon reveals that she met the master a millennium ago and doesn't really remember much. But she can still feel the master's presence and figures that he's somewhere far away, leisurely scrolling TikTok on his phone. Tarman then thanks Yon for the information, but says that it doesn't really change anything for them. He further questions whether they should tell the kingdom about this, as things might get pretty messy. Jin mentions that he should inform the kingdom, and if the king tries using Yon for his own benefit, he'll personally intervene. Yon is shocked to hear that Jin will protect her and suggests making a pinky promise. When Jin asks her about it, Yeon replies that they tear each other's pinky off to seal the deal, and whoever breaks the promise gets punched 1,000 times and has to swallow 1,000 rusty nails. Tarmin begins laughing at her suggestion and lets Jin know that he'll inform him if the king tries anything suspicious. Before they go, Tarmin tells Jin that he doesn't have the money to pay right now and advises him to take some time off while they prepare the bread. Jin agrees, and just as they are about to leave, Tarmin lets Yeon know that she doesn't need to hide her looks since she's with Jin. After that, the two of them appear at the hunter's bar, where the other hunters wonder if Jin collected another rare monster, but get told by Jin that she's a succubus demon. Surprised, everyone starts taking interest in her, while Jin notices the other girls already waiting for him at the bar. Eri informs him that Slirin and Ryu were worried about him, and hearing that Yeon is a succubus, they are even more concerned now. Yeon lets them know that she wasn't exactly hiding it and asks the girls about who they are. Slirin starts by revealing that she's the master of gluttony, and Ryu mentions that she's the dragon of ruin, indirectly letting her know that they are the superior beings. When Jin tries to stop them, the girls let him know that they are just establishing the hierarchy. Slirin further tells her that they can destroy the world, but Jin doesn't let them fight at full power, and the fact that they can control their powers is also a sign of power. After that, the two of them begin chasing Yeon down, wanting to have a match, and the hunters start betting on them. While running after Yeon, they unknowingly end up hurting Eri as well. But she doesn't seem to notice much. Seeing that things are escalating, Jin decides to order that secret dish. Meanwhile, Yeon calls them bullies, letting them know that she isn't allowed to use magic, and just when they are about to catch her, Yeon decides to break the rules and uses her flame wall. But to her surprise, it doesn't work. This allows both Slirin and Ryu to pin her to the ground. At the same time, Jin asks the chef to give him the best meat of the day, and he ends up serving the gigatuna she had. As expected, both girls start devouring the dish, completely forgetting about Yeon. After that, Jin compliments Yeon for holding back her magic, not knowing that she didn't do it willingly. Jin then apologizes to the hot bartender for the fuss, to which she replies that the hunters hadn't seen his wistful face for a while, so they are quite happy right now. Soon after, Eri is done with her work and lets Jin know that she brought some fabric and made Yeon a new dress using it. Yeon is flustered after receiving this gift, but gets interrupted by Jin, who asks both Eri and Yeon to teach him how to use magic. Later that day, Jin raises his hands in the air and concentrates hard enough to make his cheeks sweat. But as expected, not a trace of magic appears. After the first attempt, Jin questions if he managed to gather any mana, to which Yeon replies that it was no good as he didn't even make it budge. She further says that gathering mana from the atmosphere and mixing it in one's body's internal energy is the most basic thing. So if he can't do that, he can't do anything else. When Jin complains about it being pretty tough, Yeon lets him know that some people aren't built like that, but Jin has already decided not to give up. According to Jin, he couldn't even swing his sword back in the days, but after years of training, it's now as easy as moving his arms for him. This makes Yeon mention that magic doesn't have anything to do with physical, but Jin still decides not to give up until he manages to pull it off. Eventually, Yeon tells him to forget about all the boring theory and just try casting a spell, as this intuition-based approach might suit him more. He is then told to fill a cup using water blessing and figures that it would be a pretty useful spell. After that, Jin questions Eri about what he should do, to which Eri replies that all she does is pull in mana towards herself and firmly combine it with her body's energy, ultimately wringing it like a wet cloth. Eri believes that he should focus on casting the spell for now, as he can learn it better using magic theory later. With that being said, Jin starts using all the strength he has, and before long, the girls notice water appearing inside the cup. Eri gets excited seeing this and tells Jin to keep on going until Yeon interrupts and tells Eri that he's not actually gathering any mana. At this point, they can't believe how he is using magic without any mana. Eri mentions that he might have so much energy that mana is completely unnecessary, but according to Yeon, using internal energy instead of mana should not be possible. Jin comments on how this feels like it's draining all his stamina and wonders if this is what using magic feels like. After he's done, Jin opens his eyes and gets excited after realizing that he successfully used magic and doesn't have to worry about water during his quests from now on. However, seeing that he has to spend all this energy just to make such a small amount, Jin figures that it might not be worth it. Eri adds that maybe some other element might be more fitting for him, as water needs accuracy and control. She then asks if fire would work better for him, to which Yeon agrees, saying that it's surely more destructive. After that, Yeon tells Jin to gather up mana and internal energy, focus it in the center of his body, and shoot it all out at once. To her surprise, Jin manages to do it in his first try, and once again, he is doing it without gathering any mana. But after seeing the fireball growing bigger and bigger, Yeon suggests that he should probably stop as it's eating his hand, but Jin replies that he feels like he's about to get the hang of it. The fireball continues growing at a rapid rate, leaving Yeon with no other choice but to run away with Eri. The fireball then completely envelops him, and Yeon uses her flame wall to protect herself and the girls from Jin's magic. Ultimately, that fireball explodes, causing Slirin and Ryu to wake up and wonder where all that smoke comes from. While Eri struggles to wake Yeon up, Jin returns unscathed, asking if anyone got hurt. He then lets Yon know that he didn't expect it to explode so soon and believes that it's pretty hard, considering how he can only focus after closing his eyes. But then, he can't see what's going on, so it's quite a dilemma. Meanwhile, Yon completely gives up, saying that teaching a freaky barbarian like him is above her pay grade. However, Jin doesn't seem to be satisfied and asks her to teach him some more spells. But she replies that he needs to have better control over them and should practice gathering mana without closing his eyes. After that, Ryu interrupts, asking if he's done playing by himself, and Slirin adds that they don't get many chances to hang out, so he should spend some time with them as well. With that being said, Ryu wins the rock-paper-scissors game against Slirin, and for her turn, she decides to fly them across the sky. She even agrees to let Yon join them, as she has never flown before, while Eri decides to sit this one out, as flying makes her ears ring. Eventually, she turns into a dragon and begins flying in the sky with the three of them on her back. Yon, who is flying for the first time, seems pretty excited as well, completely opposite of Eri, who is watching them from the beach, glad that she didn't agree. As Yon continues to be impressed by this new experience, Jin advises her to hold on to Ryu properly, which Yon takes lightly, only to later regret it when Ryu begins flying at supersonic speed. At this point, Yon holds onto Ryu's horns for her dear life, and when Jin asks if the view from her special seat is great, Yon lets him know that she doesn't have the time to enjoy it right now. Just then, Ryu decides to go even faster and starts doing all the tricks she knows, which everyone enjoys except for Yon. Jin then notices an island that he has never seen before and suggests that they should go check it out. While trying to spot the island, Ryu moves her head, causing Yon to finally lose her grip and fall off. Soon after, the three of them return to Eri with Yon in Ryu's mouth, drenched in a mixture of salt water and her saliva. Jin is glad that she isn't hurt and mentions that, despite being a dragon, Yon still doesn't have the strength to keep up with a monster like Ryu. The dragon girl then asks Jin if he still wants to check out that island, and when he agrees, Ryu gets overjoyed and suggests going for another round. However, Slirin lets Ryu know that it's now her turn to decide what they're doing next, and when Jin questions what she has in mind, Slirin replies that they should have a sand sculpting competition. Furthermore, she notices that Eri has already made a sculpture of her own, making Slirin wonder if she can read minds. Eri replies by informing her that she was bored and figured that she'd make something while waiting for everyone to return. After taking a closer look, everyone starts to compliment her masterpiece and decides not to fall behind. With that being said, the competition officially starts, and all three of them start doing their best to make the best sculptures they can, except for Yon, of course, who is too lazy for this competition. When Eri asks if she isn't going to make anything, Yon lets her know that she had multiple golems protecting her at the castle, and with sand, she can make huge golems as well. But even after confidently pointing her finger towards the sand, nothing happens at all, forcing Yon to make a sculpture of her own to escape this embarrassment. Soon after, Slirin asks if the others are all done, and after returning to Eri, they notice that Yon made the golems from her castle. Eri informs Jin that Yon made them manually, even though she could have made them with magic, while all Yon can do is laugh hesitantly. Slirin also adds that this is looking like a real competition now, but Ryu isn't sure and asks Yon about her theme. When Yon replies that the theme is just golems, she replies that a first-class sculptor like her puts their feelings into their work. After that, she showcases the sculpture she made on the theme of love and strength. Confused, Jin wonders why it looks like a failed breeding attempt between the two most hideous-looking creatures, only to be told by Ryu that it's actually a sculpture of him. Surprised, Jin tries to play it cool by complimenting Ryu's work, while all Slirin can think of is that it at least looks tasty. After that, she reminds Jin that it's his turn now, and he then shows everyone his work, which is a sculpture of his sword. All the girls are shocked as both the size and details of that thing are perfect. He further adds that ever since he became a hunter, he has been swinging and maintaining that exact sword. Slirin realizes that they all made something that is familiar to them and mentions that she, on the other hand, made something she wishes to see again someday. Apparently, Slirin built the special class catastrophe monster called the Fortress Dragon Damocles. Jin is surprised to see the details, as it's been a while since they last saw it, while Eri comments on how terrifying it looks, only to be told by Slirin that the real one is way bigger. According to her, the Damocles is a huge dragon that wanders around the world looking for minerals to feed on and destroys everything in its path. She'd love to see it again someday, but Jin thinks otherwise. Now that they've seen all the entries, Slirin says that it's time to proceed to tasting. When Yon questions what she means by tasting, Jin informs her that Slirin will now eat all the sculptures to choose the tastiest one. But just when she is about to eat the first one, a massive earthquake shakes the ground, causing her to fall off her sculpture. They all begin running away when suddenly, the town guards appear, looking for Jin, letting him know that they have an emergency and that he needs to return to the guild. Apparently, Tarman is calling him because of a huge case for which Jin's strength is required. On the other hand, Tarman is looking at the ocean using his binoculars and notices the arrival of Damocles, who has returned after only 10 years. Later, Tarman reveals that Damocles normally remains in the depths of the ocean, but it surfaces anywhere from centuries to decades and tramples everything in its path before heading back into the ocean. He gathered all the hunters for this exact reason, as Damocles was seen approaching from the southeastern shore. It's heading to the northwest, which means by tomorrow, Damocles will have passed through the town, destroying the town and the beautiful nature surrounding it. Which is why Tarman needs the strength of hunters to protect the town. Hearing this makes Jin realize that the island they saw earlier was Damocles. Yon also tells Slirin that it sounds way worse than she was describing, only to see a huge smirk on her face because she wanted to meet Damocles pretty badly. Just then, one of the hunters intervened, asking Tarman how they were supposed to stop Damocles, as they had never fought it before. One of them old farts inform him that Damocles showed up 10 years ago, but they are all still alive. However, this doesn't really answer the question, and all the young hunters are still scared to face such monstrosity. Tarman adds the fact that Damocles is no ordinary monster, and is on par with the Master of Gluttony and the Dragon of Ruin. All the attempts to subjugate it have failed, but there was one person who was able to prevent the calamity, and that person is none other than the Rizzler, Jin. According to him, Damocles headed to the capital 10 years ago, and it was so big that no one could even get a full look at it. It had a solid shell and skin thicker than your brain. Even after attacking it continuously for 3 days, the hunters weren't even able to put a scratch on it. Nonetheless, Jin kept on attacking the Damocles face again and again, and eventually managed to break its horn. The Damocles let out a cry and headed back to the ocean, making Jin the person who prevented the calamity. Everyone is shocked to hear this, and when one of the hunters questions Jin about the horn being a weakness, Jin disagrees, saying that at first, he wanted to cut its entire body, but realizes that it would take too long. That is why he changed his goal from subjugating it to driving it back and attacking all the soft parts on its face. Tarman believes that Jin is still strong, so they shouldn't worry about Damocles, and once the capital sends the reinforcement, Tarman plans to hold another meeting. Following that, one of the hunters came up to Jin and lets him know that they were freaking out earlier, but hearing about him gave them resolve. Yon then notices that Jin looks pretty concerned and wonders if it wouldn't be an easy victory, considering he has already beaten it in the past. Jin replies that even though he managed to drive it away, Damocles still trampled a lot of important land, which included villages, farmlands, and much more. They can't let the fight continue for 3 days like last time and need a faster, more powerful plan this time. He further says that they might need Yon help as well, but gets interrupted by Slirin, who questions if she can't just eat it as Jin made her watch the house last time as well. Ryu also gets excited over the idea of fighting a walking mountain, only to be told by Jin that the world would come to an end if monsters like them started fighting Damocles, who already has such a high defense. This is why he wants Eri and Ryu to support the other adventurers, and as for Slirin, he allows her to eat its leg to stop Damocles from moving. For the time being, Jin decides to tell Tarman of the plan, but after noticing him panicking, he asks him about the matter. Tarman replies that they received a message from the capital, telling them that they won't be sending any reinforcements. Apparently, they don't care at all since Damocles is not headed towards the capital this time. Jin figures that this is exactly something that the king would do and gets told by Tarman that he at least sends one person, who calls themselves an expert in dragon studies. Turns out it's a girl named Mofel, and she researches ancient dragon races. Tarman also introduces himself as the guild master, and Jin as the bulkiest guy known to man. Mofel mentions that her primary objective is to observe Damocles' appearance, but she also has some information that could help them with their strategy. Nonetheless, Tarman still questions why the king sent a single researcher instead of hunters, to which Mofel replies that the capital's hunters are occupied with the holes and dispatching forces was deemed impossible at the moment. While Tarman freaks out after hearing that they are all in holes, Jin reads all the detailed research she has done on Damocles and gets told by Mofel that those are records of all the times it has made an appearance. Motivated, Jin mentions that they need to come up with a plan to fight with fewer people, and Mofel replies that while his story of making Damocles retreat is well known, a plan similar to last time won't work. She then shows them a sketch of Damocles, the way it's been seen over the past 10 years, and after having a look, Jin notices that it has no horns. She agrees, saying that the horn has not regenerated, and instead, Damocles has a helmet now. Apparently, Jin's attack made enough impact that its shell has evolved. Mofel continues to explain and says that Damocles spends most of its time sleeping, and when it comes onto the land, it happens by mistake because it's half asleep. But after waking up on land, Damocles becomes confused and tries to seek out water. That state of confusion dulls its pain receptors, which is why shallow attacks don't affect it. To deal with this issue, they need to attack it before it becomes confused, which is why it first steps out onto land. In summary, the plan should be to deliver an attack strong enough to wake it up and chase it away. Later that day, Tarman checked all the supplies they received from the nearby towns. Jin appears and mentions that they only have to worry about executing the strategy now. Tarman begins laughing at himself for wanting to defeat it 10 years ago, saying that the prospect of battle gets his blood flowing. Furthermore, he tells Jin that they need to have a fallback plan just in case and asks Jin if he can ask Yon to help them out with her flame magic. However, Yon gets confused hearing that her help is required, and Eri starts encouraging her as well, saying that it's her time to shine. Jin also tells her to just give it the strongest spell she can think of, which makes Yon inquire about the day they will be fighting it. But when Jin mentions that they expect Damocles to step onto land tomorrow at dawn, Yon's soul leaves her body, and she lets them know that it's not going to work. This results in both of them getting concerned, asking Yon if she's sick or low on sleep. At this point, Yon realizes that she has no other choice and reveals that she hasn't been able to use magic for some time. Yon then runs away and sits on her own. When Jin goes to check up on her, Yon mentions that she has been feeling kind of weird ever since she lost the Rule of Sloth, her previous power. Apparently, she can't use magic in succession now, as there seems to be some sort of cooldown, and since she has already used it twice today, she'll be completely useless at dawn. Yon believes that without the Rule of Sloth magic, she's just a good-for-nothing succubus. This makes Jin ask if she's feeling sick or if she has lost her appetite, to which she disagrees. While Jin and Eri are glad that at least her body is okay, Yon can't get over the fact that she can't use her powers anymore and how Jin might not even need her anymore. Furthermore, she promises to do anything, even if it's manual labor, requesting Jin not to throw her away. Realizing that he is the one who brought her here from the other world, Jin apologizes as he didn't know that a drastic change in environment could be bad for her. Additionally, he believes that even if Yon doesn't have her powers, she's still who she is and reassures Yon that he won't throw her out. With that being said, Jin asks her to wait for him in town until he deals with Damocles. And when Yon questions if he doesn't need her magic, Jin suggests making a promise with his thumb on the line, saying that he will surely make Damocles retreat and will return safely. This causes Yon to burst out laughing, reminding Jin that he is supposed to do it with his pinky, not his thumb. After he leaves, Eri asks Yon about the person who taught her magic, to which she replies that it was an innate ability for her, considering she's a demon. Meanwhile, Eri's mom is the one who taught her magic, and Eri had to put in a ton of effort because she had no talent for it. Yon mentions that she doesn't really know what it feels like to put in effort and wonders why she wants to be useful in the first place, as she's the demon of sloth. Nonetheless, Yon then asks Eri about the way she trained her magic, as staining one's muscles like Jin doesn't work for magic. Eri lets her know that, as she was more suited for support than offense, she often participated in casting ritual magic together with the kids. Shocked, Yon tells Eri that magic is supposed to be cast alone, but Eri replies that she was not strong enough for that back then and informs Yon about all the things one can do with others, which ends up making her a bit curious. On the other hand, everyone is gathered on the mountain near the ocean, and Tarman, who's keeping an eye on Damocles, lets everyone know that it's time. Before long, Damocles appears, shocking everyone as it's big enough to block the sun's rays. One of the adventurers starts to shake and remembers the time when he was forced to hide underground because of Damocles, the same monster that destroyed his hometown. Just then, another one of the hunters pats his back, letting him know that there won't be a single casualty this time, reminding the hunter of the reason he took this job in the first place. On the other hand, Mofel informs the others that they need to get rid of the sediments from the seafloor for their attacks to have any effect. To deal with this, Ryu glides towards Damocles and uses the dragon's breath on the Damocles, revealing the head that was hidden under the sediments. Mofel then mentions that Damocles' huge body is supported by countless legs that can regenerate. Tarman then announces that it's time for the next step, which is mobility. For this, Slirin steps up, telling Damocles to regenerate all at once, as she'll eat it quicker than that. While she eats its legs, Tarman lets the hunters know that it's their turn now and fires a flare gun, which makes all the hunters charge towards Damocles. Jin jumps in the air and remembers his role to keep Damocles still for 3 seconds. Simultaneously, all the other hunters start climbing the Damocles while Jin is holding it at bay and covering its head with all the blast dust they could get their hands on. Apparently, it's a chemical substance that is highly combustible, and at least 3 seconds are needed for it to settle on Damocles' head. Meanwhile, Jin continues to keep Damocles from moving further. Ultimately, he hits the 3-second mark but still decides not to back off, as while Jin's aware that his body is past its prime and his stamina is also pretty bad, he is still very confident in his raw strength and doesn't plan to lose in a battle of power. It has now been 4 seconds, and everyone started asking Jin to retreat. At the same time, Eri sets up a water barrier and tells everyone to get behind her. Ryu also begins asking Jin to get back, but he refuses to listen to anyone. Just then, Damocles stops pushing forward, and before Jin can even figure out the reason, it suddenly speeds up, sending Jin flying and crashing onto the ground. It has now been 5 seconds, and after complimenting Jin for a job well done, Tarman takes out his firebow and asks Yon if she's good to go. Yon agrees, telling Tarman that she's ready when he is. Seeing her on the battlefield comes as a shock to Jin, who thought she was at the guild. Yon remembers the time when she was having a conversation with Eri, informing her that magic refinement is the best she could hope for. However, Yon still felt unsure as it seemed harder than casting solo spells. But to her surprise, Eri mentioned that she already did it this morning when Jin was casting an explosion spell. In the middle of it, she had put her hand behind his back, and by refining the mana and internal energy, Yon subconsciously made his magic much stronger. Although some part of it was because Jin's internal energy is so strong, magic refinement was still a pretty solid factor. Back in the present, Yon puts her hand on Tarman's back and begins the refinement process. Instantly, Tarman begins feeling it inside his body and realizes that this is what magic truly is. With that being said, he finally fires the arrow, and it hits the perfect shot. A giant explosion follows, from which the hunters are protected thanks to Ares and Ryu's help. After the dust clears, everyone notices that Damocles is now awake and starts running away in fear. Meanwhile, Jin walks up to Damocles, saying that it's been a while since they saw each other. Now that the strategy has worked, Moful mentions that it's all up to Damocles' homing instincts and asks Jin to get out of there. However, he totally ignores that shorty and stands there wondering if Damocles remembers him. Jin further mentions that this isn't its home and tells Damocles to return to the ocean. Suddenly, Damocles exhales in quite an aggressive manner, which makes Jin believe that it's angry at them for waking it up. But afterward, everyone watched in surprise as Damocles turned around and calmly returned to the sea, as if Jin's feelings had reached it. Seeing Damocles leave their hometown alone, all the hunters start to celebrate their victory. Yon also falls to the ground out of exhaustion, mentioning how it feels she has done 100 years of work despite not having done anything. After returning, Eri compliments Yon for doing a great job and gives her a tight hug. Jin also mentions that she didn't know Yon could do something like that, to which she replies that it's her first time using magic for someone else as well. Up until now, Yon had dreaded all kinds of work, but for the first time, she actually enjoyed putting in the effort. Yon believes that she might have just realized how valuable labor can be, but when Jin decides to put her on cleaning duty tomorrow, Yon disagrees, saying that it's not labor if she doesn't want to do it. Soon after, Ryu also returns and lets Jin know that she has found Slirin, even though it was a pain to carry her back. After that, she throws Slirin on the ground, who now looks like the best friend of a 10 out of 10 baddie. Ryu further adds that Slirin kept on eating its legs even after it started retreating, and that she had to peel her off. However, Slirin argues that it was just so good, and she couldn't stop because it tasted just like crab legs. Hearing about getting to eat unlimited crab legs brings water in both Jin and Ryu's mouths, but they get interrupted by Tarman, who appears out of nowhere and praises Jin and the others for doing a great job. Additionally, he asks Jin to come to the square as they have a nice reward for him, which turns out to be the aquatic monsters that happen to be in Damocles' way. The port town sent them as thanks for driving it back, and now they will have a banquet tonight to celebrate. Later that night, the whole town is decorated, and everyone enjoys the banquet by eating tasty food and hanging out with one another. The next day, it is finally time for Moful to leave, and Jin drops her off near the town exit from where she will be picked up. Jin thanks her for the help, as they wouldn't have done it without her. At this point, Moful understands the reason their king always avoids confronting Jin, as he not only has the strength to go against Damocles, but also seems to have some other mysterious abilities. She further believes that back then, Jin crossed the boundaries between species and reached a mutual understanding with Damocles. Jin replies that they might be different from monsters, but in the end, they are all living things and hope that they can live in unity with Damocles one day. Jin further says that there are a lot of problems these days, including massive holes and ancient dragons, but he believes that they can overcome anything if they work together. Ultimately, he shakes her hand to say his goodbyes, but to his surprise, Moful decides to tell him something and asks Jin to keep it a secret. Although she told him that the hunters from the capital were occupied exploring large holes, when in reality, they are currently fighting an unidentified monster. A few days ago, an entity they had never seen before emerged from one of the holes. They are assuming that it has special class strength, so all the hunters are facing a tough battle. Normally, they would have sent an evacuation notice to the nearby villages, but in order to keep his face, the king had decided to stay silent. Suddenly, Jin gets a vision of a girl tied up in a place swarming with goblins, but it quickly goes away after Moful calls out his name. She then warns him that something similar could also happen with the holes near his town and advises Jin not to let his guard down. After she leaves, Eri questions if something is wrong, and Ryu wonders if it's another troublesome quest. Slirin gets excited hearing about more hole explorations, while Yon suggests taking a break as they just finished fighting Damocles. However, he totally ignores her and decides to pick up their next quest, making Yon frustrated over how hardworking Jin is. Meanwhile, Tarman receives a message from the kingdom along with some money and another prophecy. He gets shocked after reading the message sent to him by the king and calls it a death trap. Just then, his assistant informs him of Jin's arrival, and Tarman makes up his mind to stop Jin this time, no matter what. He then takes Jin to the guild storage compartment, letting him know that they finally got what he's been waiting for. Telling him not to be surprised, Tarman reveals the 100,000 gold coins reward that he received for clearing the hole, which comes as a shock to Jin. Furthermore, Tarman asks him to sign some papers, and when he questions if Jin still plans to explore more holes, Jin agrees, letting him know that he wants to explore 3 more at least, so he can have enough savings to feed all the gluttons in his house. After that, Tarman calls Jin to his office, where, after serving him some fruit water, he mentions that Jin has already subjugated 2 of the deadly sins, which means that 5 are remaining. Additionally, there hasn't been much progress with the other holes, as all the hunters who went inside haven't returned, which is why the other hunters are afraid to even consider taking that quest. Hearing this makes Jin figure that Tarman hasn't heard about what Moful told him yet. Tarman then adds that the capital has sent them an advanced payment for the next request, which is twice as much as before. Not only that, but they also sent them a prophecy which seems to be some sort of poem. After reading it, Jin realizes that the first verse talks about Yon, and the second verse is about them dealing with wrath next. Tarman figures that it will be an intelligent creature with some soldiers behind it, to which Jin agrees, calling it a difficult task to fight an army instead of a single monster. Jin then continues reading the second part of the poem and wonders if it's talking about them. Tarman agrees, informing Jin that it's not only talking about the sins, but also the people who subjugate him, and lets Jin know that according to that poem, he might die in the next world. The Great Tome either tells a certain past or a highly probable future, which is why this world will be really dangerous for Jin, and Tarman suggests stopping before it's too late. Jin reminds Tarman that he was the one who motivated him to investigate the holes in the first place, and even when Tarman agrees, he further adds that the Great Tome has been frighteningly accurate about predicting everything about the 7 sins, which is why Jin must realize that the book is also predicting his future. Their king has also noticed that, which is why he has sent this much money. He probably wants to get rid of both the holes and Jin at the same time. Because of that, as the town's guild master, Tarman can't allow Jin to go on such a dangerous quest. After staying silent for a few moments, Jin mentions that every once in a while, hunters are forced to fight monsters they know nothing about. He then asks Tarman to imagine a village that is plagued by that monster. Having no other choice, the villagers will depend on the hunters who will search for monsters at the mountain peaks or the deepest forest, eventually finding them and hunting them down. The same applies to that master as well, and whoever that master may be, the hunters will eventually crack down on him. Locating an unknown pretty and bringing it out is what a real hunt is. Following that, Jin ends up signing the papers even after hearing Tarman's warnings, promising to drag that master out onto the stage. He further reassures Tarman by saying that the Great Tome is not absolute, and if anything, it might save him from danger. Ultimately, Tarman agrees and advises Jin not to do anything reckless. Finally, it's time for the quest, and when Jin asks the girls if they're sure they want to join him. Considering how difficult this quest may be, they agree. Ryu mentions that he worries too much. Slirin is excited to taste some new monsters. Yon doesn't want to be left alone, while Eri always wants to help in any way she can. Before long, they arrive at the hole that is present in the depths of Rhodey's forest. Ryu notices that it feels different from the other holes, and Jin connects all 5 of them using a belt so they can't get accidentally separated. With that being said, they all eventually jump into that hole. It was a long, dark way down there, but soon after, they finally saw some light. But to Jin's surprise, that turned out to be a flock of dragons. Ryu informs Jin that she has never seen such dragons before, and Slirin tells Jin to leave it to her, as she'll be sure to savor them one by one. However, Jin lets her know that they can let the dragons pass, as if even if one of them gets outside the hole, things will turn sour in the world above. Remembering Moful's story, Jin figures that they must be special class monsters and asks Yon to wake up, telling her that their target is the flock of dragons and they need to wipe them out. With that being said, everyone takes out their respective abilities to deal with the dragons coming their way. Before long, a full-fledged fight between the 5 of them and the dragons began, and as expected, they easily dealt with those dragons without breaking a sweat. After taking care of them, they all begin moving forward, only to slam face first into a wall. But to their surprise, the wall then disappears and lets them enter the world. This new world looks quite different from the previous ones, as here, all the trees are higher than your parents' expectations. Jin is glad that they all managed to land safely and figures that there must be water nearby, considering how they are currently in the middle of a forest. Meanwhile, Slirin and Ryu start enjoying the dragon meat from the dragons they just subjugated, rating it from best to worst. Simultaneously, Yon gets shocked after finding out about something, and to Jin's surprise, Eri looks quite distressed as well. When he asks them about the matter, Eri lets him know that this world has no mana at all. Jin mentions that he couldn't even tell, to which Yon replies that it's because he can't feel mana in the first place. But for them, it's a huge emergency. Mana is the source of all their magic power, and without it, they aren't able to use spells. Jin gets shocked after hearing how grave this issue is, but tells the girls not to be dejected as it's just magic. They will still have him to protect them, as well as some high-grade potions. Additionally, he thinks that mana could be spread unevenly in this world, and some places might have a ton of it. For the time being, they need to find a base and some settlement where they can get water and information. For this, Ryu flies in the sky, and, after scouting the area, informs Jin that she saw some mountains, but other than that, everything is pretty much a forest. This makes Jin realize that the forest is much bigger than he thought, and to add to the trouble, he can smell monsters in every direction. Nonetheless, Jin lets them know that they have no time as they need a spot to spend the night before the sun sets. When Yon begins to complain about wanting a fluffy bed, he gets told by Slirin and Ryu to be quiet as Jin is concentrating. Apparently, he focuses his mind on hearing all the surrounding noises to find where they should be heading. With that being said, the 5 of them start going deeper into the forest, going through a marsh and a swamp. But just when they are about to reach their destination, Eri hears a sound that freaks the living world out of her. Jin reassures her that it's pretty far away, nothing to be concerned about, and notices some houses built nearby. It turns out to be a village with some people living there as well. Meanwhile, Yon has completely given up at this point and gets dragged around by Slirin, who hopes that the village has some tasty food to feed her. But when Jin mentions that they can't expect the villagers to give them a warm welcome, Yon decides to burn them to a crisp if they dare ignore her in this pitiful state, only to be reminded by Eri that they can't use magic. To her surprise, Jin seems to like this idea and asks Yon to keep looking exhausted, as the villagers might have sympathy for a weary traveler. As soon as they enter the village, they notice a boy arguing with some men on his own. He confronts those men, calling them followers of dragon gods and accusing them of taking many innocent lives because of their ways. However, the old man replies that this was the village's consensus and that they won't tolerate such selfishness. When the boy decides to bring Swen back, he gets told by the old man that by the time he reaches the altar, Swen's body will have already become a full-course meal for the dragon god. Frustrated, the boy runs out of the village, and the village chief tells his man to leave him alone as he's pretty much powerless. Following that, Jin walks up to the chief and, after introducing themselves as travelers, questions if they can find a place to stay in the village. The chief questions if he ventured this deep into the forest despite all the beasts and dragons, all while in the company of such hot baddies. Realizing that he doesn't trust them, Jin tries making up an excuse when suddenly, Yon falls onto the ground out of exhaustion. Slirin starts stressing over the fact that the exhaustion is going to take yet another life. Meanwhile, Yon mentions that she would want a cold sip of water before she dies, along with the local food, a filling meal, a big, fluffy bed, and some hot spring if available. After that, the two of them wink at Jin, not knowing that he's even more freaked out, considering how they are clearly overreacting. But to their surprise, the chief sends his men away and allows them to stay in one of the vacant houses. Jin is surprised by how easily they got the permission and thanks the chief for the help. Furthermore, Jin tells the village chief his name, and the chief also introduces himself as Zigzados, asking Jin if he has heard of this village before. Jin disagrees, letting him know that they don't even have a map, as they were just wandering around the forest. With that being said, Zigzados walk them to their house, informing them that they should have enough food and water to accommodate them. But when Jin tries thanking him once again, Zigzados asks him not to, as the house will be taken down soon anyway. To repay this debt, Jin asks Zigzados if anything has been troubling the village, such as a powerful monster terrorizing them or something. However, Zigzados mentions that he'd rather have Jin stay away from those beasts, as they shouldn't anger them anymore. He further adds that massive dragons fly over these lands, whom they call dragon gods. This makes Jin ask about the boy who ran out of the village and if he's headed towards the dragon gods. Zigzados agrees and requests Jin to bring that boy back to the village. He further informs Jin that the boy is called Zari, and he's headed far north to the altar in the mountains. On his path, there must have been many beasts and dragons, due to which he couldn't have gotten far yet. Lastly, Zigzados warns him to do everything in his power to avoid angering the dragon god. Surprisingly, Slirin decides to tag along, and when Jin asks if she's sure she doesn't want to stay at the house with others, Slirin agrees, saying that this is more fun than sitting in the house. Additionally, she plans to eat the food at the house for dinner, but for now, she's craving some fresh monster meat. This makes Jin wonder if it's some sort of a trap, considering how easily they were given that house. On the other hand, Yon has finally been revived after consuming some food. But even she thinks that this feels a bit too perfect because they have cooking supplies, leftover ingredients, which makes it almost like someone is living in the house. Both Eri and Yon start to wonder what they'll do if the owner suddenly barges in right now, but Ryu reassures them that she will protect them if anything happens. Elsewhere, Jin mentions that he just wants to get some information about the sins, but the village chief was cold, and the villagers weren't so friendly either. He doesn't think they would share information in that state, but if he manages to bring Zari back and earn their trust, things might be different then. Soon after, he notices some small dragons flying and trying to target Zari. Realizing that they have Zari surrounded, Jin decides to deal with the dragons and asks Slirin to protect the boy. But just when he is about to charge, Zari takes out his sword and uses a battle art called Flash Strike to deal with all three of those dragons effortlessly. Both Jin and Slirin are shocked to see that. And afterward, Zari falls to the ground along with the dragons he slayed. Nonetheless, Zari realizes that he can't rest and must hurry, or else Swen will be eaten. Just then, Jin appears in front of him, complimenting Zari for taking down 3 of them in an instant. Without wasting any time, he grabs Zari and starts walking towards the village. Jin reassures Zari that they can talk about his reasons on the way back to the village. Confused, Zari tells Jin to let him go, asking who in the world even is he. You think Zari will be able to save Swen before she gets eaten by the dragon god? Comment Hunter if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in and we'll catch you in the next one.